Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We will start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I believe it's Council Member Black, if you'll lead us. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have the consent agenda. We have had 3 items pulled. One is item E2, the Duke Energy sponsorship, F1, staffing addition, the city attorney's office, and G1, a budget transfer. Can I have a motion to approve the rest?
Move for approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that was unanimous, clerk. So item E2, Councilmember Black, you pulled this?
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys do ever go out downtown at nighttime or just like walk around, but I usually do, like taking pictures. And something that I noticed is that we have a number of unhoused people who use the charging stations that are available. So I was just curious if it's going to be like how much the expansion is going to be, if there'll be something that you can use like after business hours, overnight, because I think it could be something that's really beneficial as a public use for the number of unhoused people that we have living in downtown that have cell phones and need to keep them charged and don't have access to like available charging stations when they're downtown. So that was just my question around it. I just wanted a little bit more clarity, but it seems generally like something that would be good. I just wanted to understand that a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Rodney Falk at the Raleigh Convention and Performing Arts Complex. And to address your question, these are for interior, for our attendees that are coming and utilizing the convention center, the travelers that are there visiting. That's what this relax and recharge stations are designed for.
Councilmember Melton?
I actually think Councilmember Black has raised a good point. It's something I have brought up before, and we had a discussion about the mobile kiosks that are now coming to downtown Raleigh. And one of the benefits of the kiosks that I really liked is they provide free Wi-Fi for anybody in the area and charging, electronic device charging stations. And we approved those after they were debated for a very long time. I think last year, and they should be rolling out soon, and I think that will help with that point. Not only access to charging, but the internet.
Yep.
Great.
And those are outdoor kiosks that will be stationed throughout the downtown area.
Do we know how many?
I want to say
It's about a
10 or
dozen,
12,
I believe. And
throughout downtown.
I guess the contracts were recently signed, so we're checking in. And that is somebody I will be seeing at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, so I will check in with them and see if they have a date.
Awesome. I don't really have any more questions or issues with, I never really had any issues, but just wanted a clarity point. So do I motion to approve?
Yes.
I motion to approve.
You can make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous, clerk. Thank you. Next we have, thank you, staff. Next we have F1 staffing addition, city attorney's office.
Yes, thank you so much. I pulled this just because I know we had an email just alerting that this would be on the consent agenda, but the meeting that I have scheduled, it was scheduled for tomorrow. And so I just wanted some more clarity today on the needs and the necessity for adding a senior associate city attorney. Both Chief Patterson and our city attorney, Robin Tatum, were able to help me understand that, but I don't know if there's anything else that I need to say.
You can make a motion to approve if you're satisfied.
If she can speak to it, just to let everybody know what we spoke
okay.
about.
I'm glad to speak to it.
Thank you.
As the city continues to grow and get larger, so does the need for legal assistance with various departments throughout the city. And one of the greatest needs that we have right now is at the Raleigh Police Department. Right now, we have 2 attorneys who are housed at the police headquarters on Six Forks Road at all times. They are on call 24/7. They provide daily advice to the chief and employees, and they also provide, you may not know this, but all of the required state training, which is many weeks throughout the year. So they're actually doing classroom instruction. And this additional attorney would also be housed at RPD and would do employment law, which is a great need that they have on a daily basis. And Chief Patterson has long identified this as a very critical need and has asked me to work with her to get this authorized, hopefully as soon as possible. So I'm glad to answer any questions you may have, but we would appreciate council's support on this item.
Any other questions? No other questions?
I would like to make a motion to approve F1, the staffing addition to the city attorney's office.
All in favor? Aye. That was seconded by Councilmember Black. We'll give that to her. Okay, thank you. Next is G1, budget transfer water meter inventory.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yes, I pulled this, again, more for just clarification, things that as I was going through and it being a holiday weekend, I didn't fully understand and just wanted more clarification. I do see that, and I'm really excited to be proactive on the water meter and trying to make sure that we have enough as we grow. I completely understand that, but I understand the $1 million that is needed for that is coming from a different project. And I was just wondering what that project is and are they okay taking $1 million from it and speaking to that?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Erica Bailey, and I'm with Raleigh Water. Thank you for your questions. So your question was specifically about the project from which we're transferring the funds, and the funds are needed in order to accommodate both an increase in cost as well as we're having to order ahead because of the longer lead times. That project, which is a dam improvement project, is still planned. It is being conducted in phases. We completed the first phase under budget, so we had the available funds there. But we still have a construction phase to that project, and it is on our CIP, and you will see that as part of the CIP budgeting process.
Awesome. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we weren't cutting off another project's funding, so I appreciate the clarification. Okay. I'd like to motion to approve the budget transfer for the water meter inventory.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, clerk, that was unanimous. Thank you. Okay, next we have public comment. We could have the rules of decorum up. Each person will be given 3 minutes, so let's set the timer for that. And first we have Eddie Davis.
First, I'd like to say good morning to, good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Mayor and the entire council staff. This is my first time attending this meeting. And I have some concerns that I might want to bring to everyone's attention. I want to talk about something that you don't hear no one talking about, and that's rent control. It's kind of quiet in here. But, you know, the reason why I wanted to talk about this because recently I did a study, and I found that prices for renting in this area is outrageous, is out of control. 1-bedroom apartments, 1 and 2-bedroom apartments going for $1,800 to $2,000 a month, and it's constantly increasing every year. My wife and I recently was around and about looking for apartments because we're planning to downsize. We're living in a home right now. We had our grandkids staying with us. They're teenage kids. They're getting ready to go off to school, college. And we decided that we're going to downsize. So with our experience, we was around searching for an apartment that would fit us. And needless to say, everyone that I went to, one bedroom starting at $1,800 a month. I mean, my wife and I, we retired. I worked 47 years. I was a bus operator. I drove city bus. I drove for a short period of time here in the city of Raleigh. Then I went to Durham and drove, and I completed my career in Durham. So now we're on a fixed income, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of other people that are not earning the kind of money that would meet those type of prices. Now, I stand before you speaking for the middle class people, the working people, poor people that can afford this. You know, we was in California. I won't take up a whole lot of your time. I'm gonna be quick. I know y'all got a meeting to.
And your time is up, sir.
My 10 minutes is up.
Your 3 minutes.
My 3 minutes is up.
Yes.
Okay.
So one of the things, rent control is not legal in North Carolina. And that is, so that's the answer to your question about the speculation.
I didn't understand you. Excuse me. Repeat that.
Rent control is not legal in North Carolina. We cannot implement rent control here.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Feel free to come back or reach out to us. There's ways to communicate via voicemail comments, and also feel free to write us an email with any thoughts you might have.
I will do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Wished I had more time. I had a lot more to say, but I'll be coming back to these meetings.
Okay.
Thank
You
you
can
very much.
also send information to the clerk, and like if you have something written down, you can share that with her and she will share with us. Okay, thank you. Next is Robert Courts.
By the example and encouragement of Christina Jones, I am here to stand up and speak up. My name is Robert Courts, and I reside at 2807 Ashland Street in Raleigh. For 36 years, I have called Raleigh my home, my place of business. Raleigh has been the village I raised my children. Raleigh has been my friend. I have spent a 31-year career serving my fellow citizens in Raleigh, working as or for local businesses. As such, I am pleased by the growth of Raleigh's popularity and population. I welcome with open arms all the new residents of Raleigh, and I assure you, you are going to love living here. I am pro-business, I am pro-growth, and I am pro-tall buildings. But I am here today as a self-appointed spokesman for Raleigh's small local businesses. Small local businesses are the very backbone of Raleigh, providing Raleigh with its unique identity and culture. Local businesses also provide the powerful impact to our local economy by keeping local funds local, hiring Raleigh citizens, and reinvesting their profits in Raleigh. Local business owners live and work throughout Raleigh and occupy every nook and cranny in the city. In short, small local businesses are the very part and the best part of what makes Raleigh such a great place to live and work. I have grave concerns on the effects of upzoning, aka missing middle, will have on our local, naturally occurring small business community. Upzoning, or missing middle's blunt, blanket rezoning of large areas along transportation corridors favor large, more expensive building and favors large national companies. Landlords in these upzoned areas will be incentivized to sell or rent their properties at the prices now reflecting their new potential. This unchecked upzoning will lead to higher rents, further gentrification of neighborhoods, and will push local businesses' current clientele out of the neighborhoods where they live and our businesses service. Upzoning's blanket changes will add further burdens to Raleigh's small business community, still struggling to recover from the effects of the COVID pandemic. Within this entrepreneurial subset of Raleigh, minority-owned businesses will be more harmed than others. So I have 3 requests for this council. 1, I request the Raleigh City Council and Raleigh staff actively include the interest and welfare of Raleigh's naturally occurring local businesses, that you invite Raleigh small businesses to the upzoning conversation, and if the aggressive unchecked upzoning continues, I request that the city ensure there are affordable spaces for Raleigh's naturally occurring small businesses.
Thank you. Next, we have Brandon Thomas. Is Brandon Thomas here? Okay. Nick Robertson.
Good afternoon. My name is Nick Robertson. I am the Hunger and Nutrition Director with Urban Ministries of Wake County. I have engaged a few of you already. I thank Councilwoman Christina Jones for responding and listening to what we have to say. We started a program this summer called Project Pivot, which is designed to fight the ills of the city that is going on right now throughout the pandemic, combined with the gentrification of our city, combined with our largest mental health care facility being shut down a few years ago, has created a toxic stew. And this summer we decided to act. And Project Pivot has 3 main branches of service. Well, 3 main partnerships. The first partnership is we have partnered with some of the main social health care, mental health care facilities in Raleigh, like Passage Home, Southlight, Justice Serve, NC, the Resiliency Collaborative, to ensure that the families and individuals that they have identified receive food every week for the next 2 years. The second phase is we have partnered with Cisco Foods to enter the Wake County Public School System to make sure these children have proper snacks, breakfast food, juices, and everything else throughout the day while they're in school. And we're doing that for the rest of this school year and all of next school year. The third phase is other healthcare facilities like Wake Med and Galatians Healthcare to make sure the families and individuals they have identified receive the proper nutrition for the next 2 years. We are operating as if this is an emergency because it is. We need your help, specifically facilities and funding. The more help we get, the more people we can take care of, and it's really that simple. The potential for Project Pivot is really, really big, but the potential cannot be maximized without everybody getting involved. And we have already started the work. I've never seen this many homeless people here in my life. I have never seen my city look this way, and we're deciding to fight. If you say yes to Project Pivot, you are not saying yes to me. You are saying yes to this city. And we are making sure we can take care of as many people as possible. So the more people that get behind us, the more people we can take care of. I don't care about buying any more suits or office space or anything like that. Everything we get funding-wise is being pumped into this program, and this program is for the city of Raleigh and the county of Wake. And I will jump in all of your emails again. I'm doing the work, so I'm tired, but please, please help us. If you help us, this is for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. I've had meetings with several organizations lately relating to feeding our unsheltered community and our children. And I had a conversation with the city manager. We provide funding, and this mostly for the new council members. We provide funding to nonprofits. And one of the things I was going to save this for the retreat, but one of the things I would like to see us do is be more proactive in telling people when they can apply for grants and being out in the community informing them. So I'll bring that up again at the retreat, but this is definitely a need. And if you could send us some more information that's more specific on the ask, that would be appreciated. Councilmember Branch.
Thank you. I was going to ask if staff can follow up with Mr. Robertson on some of our current opportunities
Yep.
to assist, because I know he mentioned facilities. So maybe there's a way for certain programs on certain days, hours, facilities may be utilized in partnership with our departments.
Well, not only that, but people who are doing the work already, Meals on
Right.
Wheels, Interfaith Food Shuttle. There's opportunities for partnership. Nobody has to stand alone in this.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Octavia Rainey.
Good afternoon. Today is a national day of racial healing. And because this is a national day of racial healing, I'm again asking to speak for a reparation task force on slavery and systematic discrimination. Without accountability, there is no justice. We must understand that slavery goes back to emancipation, anti-lynching laws, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and the creation of the Raleigh Redevelopment Commission in 1953. And they were all white men. And I will repeat to you, they were all white men who didn't even care about the black community. But that Raleigh Redevelopment Commission was created by the city. So you still hold responsibility for that creation. And it was a shame how they went through and destroyed Fourth Ward, how they went through and destroyed Smoky Hollow. It was a shame. And when you look at this city council, it's like you don't care about the past. You don't care. And it's a shame that we have not went back to the past and you said, I'm sorry for the past. You have not one of you. You have not. And I think that's a crying shame. And even when you look back at the New Deal that was created through the Great Depression, it was not a benefit for African Americans. They was left out of the benefits. So I could go on and talk about what we prospered 400 years, not an iota. And you come down to today, those neighborhoods don't even exist. They don't exist. What happened? We need this reparation task force. We need it because the city ain't said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what happened. I'm sorry with the creation of the Redevelopment Commission. Y'all ain't said not one thing. It's about time that you step up to the plate. And you do that by creating this task force. You create this by saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what we did to African Americans. You know, I was asked to speak today in Durham, but I told them I couldn't because I said I am too emotional on that subject. And they understood, but I wasn't the right person to speak because of my emotions. But I'm telling you, the city of Raleigh, you have to create a reparation task force. You have to step up and say, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Next, we have Rick High.
Good afternoon, Mayor and distinguished council members. My name is Rick High. I'm a resident of this city. I just returned here pre-pandemic from working with youth in Ohio, Michigan, and Illinois, some of the worstest kids. What I'm here to talk about today is the recreational bill that was passed by the city. and the natatorium that you guys have proposed for Chavis Park. If you want to name this place after somebody, I got one person that you guys should consider. His name is Herman Hinton. Now, through all my travels, I've always heard that black people can't swim. That's a misnomer, because when I grew up, and I grew up in Oberlin, we used to come over to Chavis Park, where everybody that was my complexion used to have to come to recreate. Herman Hinton taught just about everybody I know how to swim, and I know a lot of people. So that's why I'm here today, just to suggest that when you guys are considering naming something for somebody in the recreational field, that you consider Mr. Hinton. Not only did he do swimming, he also was the coach of the first interracial championship basketball game held by the city of Raleigh during segregation. I was the scorekeeper at that time at J.C. Park. He had a team called Dark Side of the Moon. They played Players Retreat. What Players Retreat did, though, which was befuddling to me as a youngster, they recruited former NC State players to play against this guy. This guy had neighborhood kids, but he beat them. And that, to me, was significant doing that. That was in 1967. That was very significant to me. So at this time, I would suggest that you guys do a little research on Herman Lee Hinton. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. You got that? Okay, thank you. Brittany Futrell.
Good afternoon, council members, mayor. My name is Brittany Futrell. I'm a resident of Raleigh, North Carolina. I would like to bring attention to the Oak City Business Lab grant for small business owners here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm a small business owner myself. This is the only grant available for residents that still linger that have COVID-19 funds for small business owners here in Raleigh. There's currently $3.1 million still left to fund small businesses owners, and the grant amount caps at $30,000 for businesses. There were 51 businesses awarded the grant in the first round of funding that amounted to $1.1 million of grants to go out. City officials refused to create guidelines that allow Raleigh small business owners the ability to reapply for second round funding when there is more than enough money. I am asking the city and mayor to address the statute and federal officials, to address the state and federal officials that put guidelines in place for the relief of federal aid to the people. Raleigh is the capital of North Carolina and holds great influence in the state. Federal government has released COVID-19 relief funds that the city and state still holds, and the state and federal guidelines make it nearly impossible for the people to receive the monies. I ask the city of Raleigh to challenge these guidelines that make it difficult for small business owners and citizens to receive federal aid to assist with the recovery with the global pandemic. And I will also ask that the mayor pays attention when we talk about black things in the city and black progression, and not just look down and not pay attention. Thank you.
I'm taking notes. Thank you. And in fact, I was asking our city manager if she could follow up with us in the manager's report. This is new to many of you, the Oak City Business Labs that we created. So just so there's an explanation, and also so we understand the rules, people get funding one time, and I think Ms. Futrell is asking if we can change those rules. So if you will follow up with us, okay?
Madam Mayor, there was an email sent to us today that the second round is expected to open in late February, and staff is planning a midpoint council report presentation February the 7th. And feedback from the program recipients has been received. So there is a second round scheduled. Okay, she's not.
We were funded in round one, the current program, just to be able to spread the love.
Okay, so can we look at, we'll look at it and just go from there.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is make sure we can positively impact as many businesses as possible. but we'll get a report on that. Dr. Kimberly Mukhtarian. See her? Okay. Sometimes people are behind the podium and I can't see them, so, okay. Del Monte Crawford.
Oh, sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all are having a great afternoon. Councilwoman Black, good afternoon. Mayor Pro Tem, Madam Mayor Baldwin, and happy Tuesday to you all. I'd first like to thank Chancellor Fort for chairing the Task Force on Homelessness and serving as a liaison on the Fair Housing Hearing Board. As many of you may know, I've been a resident of North Carolina for 12 years and a Raleigh resident for 4 years, and saw how politics crippled the middle and working class. Well, we're here to fix that. This past election, Democrats secured a thin supermajority in the House, supermajority in the state's General Assembly, and I'd like to thank Congresswoman Ross, Congressman Wiley, and the rest of the Congressional 7 for being a voice in North Carolina. Secondly, I did not sign up for this, Madam Mayor, but I would like to oppose the public nuisance on 3216 Julian Drive, which is in my district. I do oppose the city placing a lien. While the property could use some upkeep, cleaning the front yard, clearing broken vehicles from the street, I do believe that the city should work with the resident and see if there are county resources available to assist the resident. Madam Mayor, as a courtesy, I can help clean up the front yard, but I do urge City Council to not place a lien on that property. Lastly, I rise today to address the housing crisis in Congressional District 2. Congresswoman Ross and I have a Zoom meeting within the next few weeks to discuss affordable housing and what that looks like here in Raleigh. I did have a few photos of duplexes and townhomes that could address missing middle, but I did not bring them. But while this is not specific to race, we must understand that Black Americans will be underrepresented to combat homelessness. Lastly, in last council meeting, a married couple, Ashley McGregor Stallings, addressed council as part of Justice Served. While they only spoke for 60 seconds that night, the message was clear. We're looking for a hand up, not a handout. So Chancellor Fort, I'll leave you with this. With the plan that Mr. Lamont spoke regarding funds to combat the missing middle, does the $5 million plan work, and will $224,000 work for emergency housing with a city of over 1 million residents? Pertaining to reparations, it's reparations now, reparations then, reparations in the future. I am urging City Council to at least have a task force for reparations. I have 8 seconds left. I know there was a forum where you did say that we can have conversations of reparations, but the city could not actually do anything about it. But it would be nice to see this council have a task force for reparations. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have the report and recommendation of the Planning Commission.
Good afternoon, Bynum Walter, Planning and Development. So we have a number of, just as a reminder, we have a number of cases that are already scheduled for a public hearing. You know, we have a special meeting next week with a number of items. And then we also have, I think it's 8 scheduled already for the 7th at the evening meeting. And then looking a little farther ahead, there are no items scheduled yet for the afternoon meeting of the 21st. There is one item, a continued public hearing from December that will show up on your March 7th agenda. So coming out of the report of Planning Commission, they met last week, and those items appear on your agenda today for action on your part to set the public hearing. There were 2 items recommended for public hearing on the 7th, which would add to that list, and then 3 recommended for the 21st. I would note that Z8222 Mitchell Mill Road, the applicant emailed you early this or mid-morning today and asked that you hold this as a special item to your next meeting to delay setting the public hearing. And staff has no concern with that request. They wish to make their, possibly revise, make their request less restrictive, and it's best to do that before the public hearing is scheduled. So a quick reminder about what each of these cases is. So Z2422 is the Raleigh Ironworks rezoning. This would increase height there. Again, recommended public hearing date here of February 7th. These are in the order of the agenda versus the way I had grouped them on the previous slides. Running Fox Lane, this is a request that's going from R1 to R6. Planning Commission recommends approval, again, suggested for February 21. A case that's Jones and Boylan. This is west of a case you'll hear at public hearing this afternoon. This is suggested for public hearing on the 21st. Text change to zoning conditions on the east side of Blue Ridge Road, just northeast of the fairgrounds. This is just amends the conditions, would add a housing option as a development scenario on the site. Again, suggested public hearing date of February 21st. And then the Mitchell Mill Road request, which, as I mentioned, the applicant would like for you to hold this as a special item at your next meeting so you could set the public hearing date during your meeting on the 7th. During the meeting on the 7th, you would take action to set the public hearing for a future date. So just a reminder how that all adds up. 3 new items for the 21st, which has no items scheduled currently. You could schedule Ironworks for the 7th, and Mitchell Mill is asked to be held as a special item till the 7th. What questions could I answer, or Roberta Fox, Chair of the Planning Commission, who is also here this afternoon?
I have a question related to Ironworks. Was there any controversy around that rezoning before Planning Commission?
There has not been a lot of input from the public on that case. The Planning Commission had a lot of conversation about the nature of the request and the pedestrian and transportation connectivity of the site as part of their deliberation.
Okay, could I hear from the chair on that, please?
Good afternoon.
For those who don't know, Roberta Fox is our chair of the Planning Commission.
Thank you. The item you're asking about, Z4222, the Ironworks. There was a significant amount of conversation at the Planning Commission related to off-site pedestrian improvements. There was a recommendation coming out of the commission that council consider looking at pedestrian connectivity as a whole, almost like an area plan, to look at pedestrian connections that are outside of the scope of this particular rezoning.
So that would be more a city function.
Correct. That was the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Jones?
If you can just clarify for the 7th, you said we had 8, and I know Mitchell Mill, we said we would possibly push back later, so we would have 9 public hearing on the 7th. Is that the total?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Where I was going with this was maybe moving Ironworks to the 17th, potentially, but
The 21st?
I mean, the 21st, I'm sorry, just so there wasn't such a heavy load on that, at that first meeting. But I don't know if there's anybody here representing that case. Is the applicant here?
Michael Birch is the applicant. I have seen him in the building this afternoon. He may be in the lobby.
I was just wondering if there was any.
Well, I think Lou's going to go.
I just wanted to know if there was any hardship related to moving that.
Michael Birch is no longer here.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, then I guess we will leave it as staff has recommended. I'll make a motion to approve staff's request and also in that hold Z8222 for the next meeting for public hearing to be set.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? So Christina was, Jones was opposed. Okay. Which one were you concerned about?
It wasn't a concern. It was kind of feeding off of what you said. I'd like the option to lower that. I think that going with 9 cases, anything over like 7, kind of hinders our ability to actually give each case the attention it deserves. So that's my hesitation for it.
Actually, 9 isn't that bad. I'm just saying, we've had some where we've had many more. So,
Agree to disagree.
and get ready for next week. Yes. All right, thank you. Next, we have special items. This is a rezoning that has been before us several times now, as we need to schedule the hearing. Where are we now on this?
Yes, ma'am. So Z6522, this is at the northeast corner of Hillsborough and Boylan. It includes Elmwood and the Char Grill. We have seen revised conditions here. Staff's recommending a public hearing date now of March 7. And so new since December 6, conditions 1 through 3 have not changed, nor have 4, 5, and 6. But they have added a 7th condition, which limits materials that can appear on external street-facing facades. And I know there have also been some intervening, some language adjustments to existing conditions, some of the existing conditions, but this is the new condition. They've been coordinating with the attorney's office on some of those other items. But we are ready to schedule the public hearing now for March 7th, if you are.
Could you just put the conditions up one more time?
Yes, of course. So they've prohibited a handful of uses that would otherwise be allowed. They have promised or provided that construction at 16 North Boylan, that a development plan there would have to submit for a certificate of appropriateness. If Elmwood is damaged or destroyed, applicant is providing public notice of an offer for salvage for 90 days. Prior to any excavation of Elmwood, an archaeological assessment is required and has to be reported to Raleigh Planning and Development. Also, documentation of the structure at 618 Hillsborough is required and has to be provided to the State Historic Preservation Office. And then site plan for 13 North Boylan and 2 lots on Willard, again, requires notice, opportunity to relocate or salvage parts of the structures there for up to 180 days. And then this final condition about no ephes or vinyl as external street-facing facades.
March 7th, public hearing.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I make a motion to approve public hearing for that date.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the report and recommendation of the city manager.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We have one item on the agenda today and just an update that I want to bring forward. We will be getting you a copy of the updated work session agenda by the end of the week so that you can have an idea of what items and what topics have been slotted for the next couple of months as we plan out 2 to 3 months in advance. So the one item on the agenda is the Lake Willow Road improvements. We have Sylvester Percival from Department of Transportation here, who is going to talk to us about the request for condemnation and how that work will begin on Lake Willow Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of City Council. Again, my name is Sylvester Percival, Engineering Services, Roadway Design and Construction Division Manager. And I stand before you to present the Lake Wheeler Road Improvement Project. I'm joined by my colleagues today from Parks and Recreation, also from the Department of Transportation, as well as the Planning Department. And they're all here to assist me in answering questions as needed following this presentation. STV Engineers Incorporated, they're the design consultant that's working with the city team to design this project. The project is a little over a mile long. It starts on the southwestern end around Centennial Parkway and ends along South Saunders Street at the West-South Street intersection. This is a project that we've been working very closely with the team for the Dorothea Dix Plaza Play improvements on. The project does parallel the park, and so it's looked at as a gateway to the park. And so the need to have that harmony is something that we've been working very hard with the design team for the park to accomplish. Not only that, but also the community that exists along the southern section of the corridor, mainly the Fuller Heights community, is another avenue which we've been trying to work very, very closely to harmonize with as a part of these improvements. The corridor exists as a two-lane undivided avenue with no curb and gutter, no sidewalks, and no bike facilities. The development makeup is mixed park, commercial, and industrial uses, as well as residential. As a part of this project, we are mainly trying to accomplish making the corridor as safe as possible, given the fact that the improvements to the Park Plaza play area is anticipated to generate or increase trips to and from the park. That focus is a necessary focus that we try to maintain and will try to maintain throughout the design process, in addition to connectivity. How are we doing that? We're doing that through improving new intersections. There are 4 roundabouts proposed along the corridor, in addition to a new signalized intersection, and you will get a glimpse of those locations later on in the upcoming slides. We are also proposing to put the new median separating the 2-lane facility, adding curb and gutter, also adding sidewalks and multi-use paths. The corridor exists with a vertical alignment or inclines that are less than desirable. And so one of the ways we're planning to address that, of course, that's a big safety concern for the public as well as of us. And so one of the ways we're trying to address that is by proposing to reduce the speed limit from 35 to 25 miles per hour. Also, we're looking at some of those inclines and trying to flatten them out to the degree that we can along the corridor. Another need is to improve access into Dorothea Dix, which we are doing as a part of this project. Just to note a couple of the challenges that we are faced with as a result of the project is there exists on the north side, on the park side, an easement owned by Duke Transmission Group. It encompasses a good bit of their larger infrastructure, huge metal poles, high-powered lines. There are also private utilities, such as communication cables and gas that exist on the south side, public utilities, water and sewer along the corridor. There exists a railroad crossing as well, and that we're having to coordinate with Norfolk Southern on. The right-of-way within that corridor is pretty tight. The width doesn't leave much room for improvement the way that we would like to see it. However, we've been working very heartily at trying to maintain the character, not impact the structures, particularly on both sides, really, the park infrastructure, but mainly the residential structures that are located along the southern section, mainly the Fuller Heights community, where we're proposing to get easements that are temporary and permanent, just to be able to get our improvements in. Park infrastructure is also another challenge. Looking at the slide there, there's the Anderson building that is occupied by DHHS. We are proposing to impact parking. And so that is has been and still maintains a challenge for us. That also adjacent developments are coming in along the project. There are two of them that I will note that are occurring within the northeast section of the project. And those two developments are Hamill Development as well as Park City South. The cross-section of the roadway that is proposed is generally 2 11-feet lanes, one in each direction, separated by a median that's proposed to be, in general, 9 feet wide. On the full height side, or the southern side of Lake Wheeler, we are proposing a 6-foot sidewalk that is going to be offset from the back of curb anywhere from 0 to 6 feet. The park side is going to vary in terms of the shoulder section. We are proposing a separated bike and ped facilities, or separated bike and ped facilities. Sometimes we're able to keep them close together and closer to the roadway. Others, due to the transmission infrastructure as well as the topography of the natural lay of the land, we are forced to push those facilities further away from the roadway. This is one of the highlights of the project, where we are proposing a new signalized intersection at the intersection of Maywood and Lake Wheeler. At the top of the page there, you can see the entrance to a new entrance to the farmers market. Again, safety being a very big factor of this design. You can see improvements that we're making to accommodate pedestrians via the white shaded sidewalks that you see, as well as bike accommodation, shown by the green box, as well as the green bike lanes that you see on the bottom leg of that intersection, representing the Maywood Avenue. Another highlight is a unique roundabout that we're proposing between Mercury and Good, because of the nature in which those intersections are separated in harmony with Lake Wheeler. We were forced to use this type of roundabout, as the standard roundabout would not allow for its use in these locations without having a negative impact to the project. And so this elongated roundabout is proposed. It's affectionately known as the peanut roundabout because of its shape. You can see where we have actually started at the right of the roundabout there. We started separating the facilities between the bike and sidewalk. We also have raised crossings on Mercury and at Good, which helps to bring about better visibility for those bicycles and pedestrians who are crossing at that point. And that's an interesting feature I thought was worth mentioning. This is the second roundabout that is proposed at Dell Adams. It's a standard roundabout. The topography in this location was a bit challenging. And so if you look at the top half of the slide there, you'll see, again, two facilities that are separated to accommodate bike and pedestrians. You'll also see a new connection to the park leading from the roundabout going upwards. The upper part of that slide, that represents a new connection, Dell Adams connection to the park. That's, again, will be connected to the features of the Plaza Play improvements. Raised sidewalk or crosswalks are also proposed at the Dell Adams legs of this intersection, again, to bring about clearer visibility for those crossing like bikes and pedestrians. This is another highlight, once again, of the project. This is located between the section of Lake Wheeler located between Grissom and Fuller intersections. We are proposing new pedestrian entrances into the Dix Park. You can see about 3 of them there in the vicinity where the crosswalks are located. This section also marks the bringing together of the separated facility into one multi-use path. It was challenging trying to maintain the separated facilities through this section because of the existing transmission and the safety requirements that Duke has in place as a result of that transmission easement and infrastructure. The third and fourth roundabouts are shown at Hamill, and if you look in the very far distance, more downtown, you'll see the fourth one that's proposed at South Saunders intersection with Lake Wheeler. Again, based on the existing topography, we are proposing retaining walls along this section of Lake Wheeler. We were able to get back to the separated facility along this section because the impacts to Duke easements weren't as detrimental in this area, and so maintaining the separated facility was a good thing throughout this section. There have been several public outreach and engagements associated with this project that started with a pre-designed virtual open house in the fall of 2021. We also had meetings with the Southwest Community Engagement, Southwest Community Engagement Forums, 2 of them, one in the fall of 2021 and the other in the spring of 2022. We also had a design update campaign where we shared videos with the public and got valuable feedback on some design changes that we were contemplating at the time, and that's what actually resulted in one of the unique features that you saw on one of the slides, and that is the elongated roundabout, again affectionately known as the peanut roundabout. That was one. We also got feedback on the art that is being proposed as part of these improvements, and that a lot of the input we received, the art was favored to be placed on the retaining walls, and so that's something that we will be looking at as a part of our project as well. There are meetings with the Dix Park Leadership Committee, 2 of them. Got, again, valuable feedback that we were able to incorporate very strongly in our design. We had an advanced design open house in last fall, 2022, where we engaged the public, got good feedback. Again, we're able to put in some last-minute changes, tweaks to our design as a result of that feedback. And there were several pop-up events as well that also occurred. So the public outreach and engagement efforts we felt were very, very strong, and we appreciated every bit of feedback we were able to get as a result of that those engagements and outreaches. The survey results generally showed that most were in favor of the design improvements that we were proposing, which included not only the parameters mentioned at the beginning of the slide, but also the elongated roundabout, raised medians, also for the bike and ped separated facilities. That was also, by the way, supported by BPAC, and also the preferred wall design. The preferred wall design include public art, as well as some tiered feature that we are actually looking at as well as a part of these improvements. So coming close to the end here, just wanted to mention just the rough schedule. It just kicked off the project, that is, with pre-design in 2021. We had the advanced design public touch point last fall in November 2022. Had advanced design submittals. The permitting agencies got some good comments that we were able to incorporate. And now we're here before you to request present the project and also to request the pre-condemnation authorization. We're hoping to be in a position to complete property acquisition and complete our design in the fall of this year, and be able to bid the project the winter of 2024, and be able to break ground in the spring and complete construction in fall of 2025. And this brings us to our recommendation today, to adopt a resolution asking for pre-condemnation authority. Just wanted to express that this request is to be used as a very last resort, not a first resort. We try to negotiate successfully with every property owner to acquire the land interest that we need in order to pursue this project. However, at times it gets very messy and challenging, especially when there are heirs involved, and just trying to reach out and continue a continuous, effective conversation, negotiation. Just gets very, very messy, and so those are the challenges which we would obviously try to use the condemnation authority to address. It really helps us. It's a tool that is used to help us deliver the project on time, or sometimes it saves us on time. And so that's why I stand before you today to request that you adopt the resolution which authorizes the pre-condemnation authority, and that we do so not. I'm sorry. Just to back up a bit, the condemnation authority. Just reading straight from the slide here. We're requesting that you adopt a resolution which authorizes condemnation to acquire the needed property interest, whether fee simple or easement, to advance construction of the Lake Wheeler Road Improvement Project if the property interests are not acquired by the city by voluntary conveyance by September 1st, 2023.
Okay, that was a lot of information for the new council members. This design has been ongoing or in process for almost 2 years, and lots of public comment, as you saw with the survey results. Finally built consensus around this design and moving it forward. So this is a step that is taken whenever we're doing these types of projects. We allow staff to begin negotiations and also adopt a resolution of condemnation. That's part of the process. So I just wanted to ask if any of you had questions. Councilmember Harrison.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Mr. Percival, for the presentation. Very helpful. I have biked down Lake Wheeler Road. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So I do believe this is a very important project in terms of pedestrian safety, to have sidewalks, to have access to separated, facilities for bicycles, for walkers, is very important. So that I'm excited about with the project and all of the community engagement that's gone on. This area, it's within the Dix Edge study area that we're going to be looking at next week. It's a very important, kind of transitional neighborhood area right now in terms of there's a lot of folks that are, middle income, lower income. And so I did look into exactly where the properties would be acquired, which part of the properties. And from my understanding, I just wanted to get it confirmed, there's no structures that would be taken. Rather, this is frontage. So grass in the front of someone's yard. And it seems as though most of these are rentals. I could be wrong, but a lot of the properties are. And so there's no risk of any kind of immediate displacement of those renters because no structures would be taken, from my understanding. Could you just confirm that or let me know?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then I also just had a question. I know this is outside of the scope of the project, but I'm thinking about the neighborhoods just a little bit south of 40, Carolina Pines off of Lake Wheeler Road. Once you head down towards Tryon, there's a lot of neighborhoods that are, really divorced right now from downtown Raleigh. And so this could be an awesome connectivity point, but I'm curious, what are the opportunities to add further connections just a little bit south to get us over 40 and, along Lake Wheeler Road just further south? Are there any opportunities we have there?
I would say there are opportunities in terms of the actual projects and the timelines for those projects. I am not completely certain, but I'll call on my Department of Transportation colleague, Kenneth Ritchie, to provide some input. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Councilmember Harrison. There are no program projects right now for that gap. Certainly that has been a recurring theme that we've heard throughout engagement. So certainly one of those areas that we're aware of and that we're trying to work through.
Yeah, I'd be curious just to hear more about that in the future. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Branch.
As far as the, excuse me, as far as the, getting the property right away, are some of these temporary or are some of these going to be permanent?
Both temporary and permanent.
Okay.
Temporary is a temporary construction easement.
Right.
To allow for machine or equipment maneuverability, and permanent in terms of any, if we're pushing, say, the slope that's associated with sidewalks or something onto those properties, then we will get a permanent slope easement to be able to accommodate those improvements on the property.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask that question for at least some of my new council members to understand that as we're getting some of these easements, that some of them may go back to the property owner after construction, because we will only need it for construction. And some, as he stated, will be for the long haul of the project.
Thank you.
Councilmember Melton.
Don't have a question. I'm prepared to make a motion. I just wanted to also add that I also have attempted to bike this portion of Lake Wheeler Road, and it is extremely dangerous, and so this is a much-needed project. I also think it expands access to Dix Park to a lot more folks, especially people who may not have a car or choose not to have a car. And so I know that there are some pains with any construction project, especially when we have to go in and acquire some extra space, but it's a necessary step. So I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, that was unanimous, Clerk. Thank you. Thank you for the work on this. Now we go to matters scheduled for public hearing. First, we have public nuisance lien on 133 Bluff Street. No one has signed up in support. No one has signed up in opposition.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. I'm Bryce Abernathy with the Housing and Neighborhoods Code Enforcement Division. I'm bringing to you 4 nuisance abatements today, asking you for adoption of a resolution for the cost incurred by the city, excuse me, to bring those into compliance.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Branch.
If Bryce could you explain, at least for our new council members, when we do the lien process, we're not looking to take the property, but this is where we will collect, I guess, at the sale of the property.
Correct. Correct.
So if you can just explain.
Yeah, those liens stay on the property until it's sold. As far as I know, I think finance will work with the property owners as far as making payment plans and such. But yes, it does stay on the property. If they sell it, it has to be paid.
That's all.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Patton.
Yeah, could you outline for us the steps, all the steps that happened before we were seeing this now,
Sure.
communications and stuff?
So this, the one that we're probably talking about, 3216 Julian, was a request from somebody in the neighborhood. We went out on July 22nd of 2022 and did an inspection, and a notice of violation was sent to the owner per the tax records. We also post a copy of the letter on the house. we get the letter per our code gives them 10 days to bring that into compliance. Typically, we are not out there on day 11 to resolve the issues. And this one, the crew went out to abate it on November 9th of that year, so it was probably about a month and a half. Once that happens, the city crew that does it sends us a bill. We send that out to the property owner and scheduling this hearing.
Sorry, computer's in a weird spot. So just to confirm, they just get one issue of the letter?
Yes.
Just like one warning?
The initial notice of violation and then the letter saying, hey, you're scheduled for council. And during this process, if there's any time when we can find a phone number, we certainly reach out and talk to them. I think staff was on site during the abatement process also with this one.
And Councilmember Patton, these are all complaint-driven. So if somebody contacts us to complain about conditions, whatnot, that's when it comes to our attention. Okay, for this, I am going, Council Harrison.
Yeah, just one question. So when you put the notice on the door, if someone is there at that time, would you then talk with them?
Yeah, staff always carries on that conversation if somebody comes to the door.
And is there ever, I don't know, issues that arise, like someone is maybe, is there like a mental health issue or something going on that is really keeping them from fully understanding, or?
We do run into those situations from time to time. We've recently been using the Acorns.
I was
unit
curious, yeah.
with a lot of those kind of issues. But yeah, we'll work with them on time. If they request extensions, we'll work with them within reason. We'll work with them on that.
Okay. Are any of these cases, do you know, were they referred to Acorns or?
I don't believe any of these were.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to open the hearing and close the hearing. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous, clerk. Next, we have public nuisance lien 605 Bragg Street. No one has signed up in support or opposition.
If you guys have any questions.
Questions? Do you want to put the pictures up, or?
I can.
Which one are you on right now, Mayor? Bragg Street?
Yeah, we're getting to Bragg Street.
Okay.
It's not on this slide. It's on the previous slide.
Right.
So 605 Bragg was just high grass.
Mayor, to confirm, that was Bragg Street was part of the public nuisances. We're on a different case now.
We're on Bluff Street previously.
Oh, we're doing those
Now
liens
on-
one by one?
Individually.
That's
Oh.
how they're listed.
Sorry.
Just a question on the high grass. Sorry, when was it noted last?
605 Bragg, the date of inspection was August 31st.
And how long of a period, do you know?
We completed the abatement on October 7th.
And it was still a concern then? It had nothing had changed?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, no one has signed up in support or opposition. I'm going to open the hearing and close the hearing. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, clerk, that was unanimous. Next is 3216 Julian Drive, if we could have the photo up. Thank you. Any questions? All right, no one has signed up in support or opposition. I'm going to open and close the hearing. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? That was unanimous, clerk. 2240 Lockwood Folly Lane.
And again, this one was high grass as well as the trash and items in the backyard.
Any questions? Okay, no one has signed up in support or opposition. I'm going to open the hearing and close the hearing. Do you have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous, clerk. And then 6528 Lincolnville Road.
Yes, so this one's a little bit different. This is a demolition that the city completed on a property. We initially notified the owner in October 19th of 2021 about this particular property. I brought it to city council in this past May where a demolition ordinance was adopted. There were structural issues. The front porch had caved in. There was a pretty large hole in the side of the house that had been open to the elements for probably a year. Council did adopt that ordinance, and we completed the demo on November 23rd of this past year. Those costs include asbestos testing, advertisement costs. The actual cost of the demolition is where that amount comes from.
Okay, I'm going to open the hearing and close the hearing. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous as well. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Can I make a suggestion in the future on the background material? If you all can list when when it was cited and when the action was taken.
I believe the first page on each one of those should delineate kind of when it was sent out.
I didn't see it, but
on the agenda.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at it. Okay. Well, I'll follow up with you.
And I also think it's important to note that if once we make contact with the property owners and they are willing to try to make an attempt to alleviate the nuisance, that we do work with them. And it is not uncommon for staff to come and ask council for a 30-day or a 60-day or a 90-day extension if the property owner is working with family members. A lot of times it's heir property, or if they're trying to get their monies together to figure out how they can abate the situation.
Yep, thank you. Okay, next we have petition annexation AX 222, 1605 Rock Drive and Pool Road.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those on the council who may not know, my name is Christopher Golden. I'm with Planning and Development, and I oversee the annexation program. We do have several annexations before you today, the first of which is AX 222. That has two addresses at Rock Drive, 1605 Rock Drive and 5805 Pool Road. For each annexation petition, we do have some presentations. We usually reserve those if you have additional questions, but I will go over the first one in a little more detail so that you're all aware of what's in those presentations. So this first annexation is just under an acre at 0.93. It's contiguous and inside the ETJ. It consists of a total of 2 lots. The proposed use on that property is townhomes, 10 units. It's zoned R6. There's water and sewer available to the site. Well, I should say the petitioner is requesting water and sewer. There's water available to the site. And there's sewer extension required that's just under 2,000 feet. So if you, on the first slide, you'll see the lots and the property description. The second one here, you can go ahead and see the utilities that are available, and you can see those sewers to the left in the green, and then you see the water line, the blue, in Pool Road. The current zoning, as I stated before, is R6. You can see that there on the map. And showing site topography and floodplain, which is something we also include. And as you can see here, there's no areas of concern in terms of floodplain, pretty level topography. And you can see the site location on the satellite, and you can see the street view as well. So sometimes we'll have multiple pictures here, but that is the first one showing the site, and that is another photo on the site showing some cleared area. And I am more than happy to answer any questions that you may have on this, and if you do approve the annexation today, it will be brought into the boundaries of District C.
Okay. No one has signed up in support or opposition. Do we have any questions for staff? Okay, I'm going to open the hearing and close the hearing. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Next is AX 1922.
Thank you. And this property is at 2801 Barnwell Road. So we're looking at 16.62 acres. It's also contiguous and inside the ETJ. It's zoned R4. The petitioner is proposing townhomes on this property, looking at 75 units total. There's water available in Barwell Road. Sewer actually runs through the property on this. If it is annexed today, it'll be brought into the boundaries also of District C. And I can answer any questions on that as well.
Any questions? Again, no one has signed up in support or opposition. I'm going to open the hearing and close the hearing.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. That is
thank you.
unanimous, clerk. Next is AX 2622.
Thank you. So this annexation is two addresses also, 8031 Lewisburg Road and 8101 Lewisburg Road. Just over 41 acres. It's also, the property is contiguous to city limits. It's inside the ETJ. There is a site plan under review on this property. Its zoning is a mouthful, but it's residential mixed use, 4 parking limited, conditional use. So residential apartments are planned for this property, 331 units. There is water in Lewisburg Road. There's sewer along an easement along the Neuse River. This property does border the Neuse River. There is floodplain on this property, as you can see right here, but the property is the structure and everything that's built is actually outside the floodplain. And I can answer any questions that you may have on that. If this is annexed into the city today, it'll be brought into the boundaries of Council District B. Yes.
Oh, just one question. So we would see a rezoning case again if we annex this now. We'll see a rezoning case later.
No, there was an annex. There was a rezone that took place on this previously. So this has been rezoned. It's just a question of annexing into the city to actually connect to that water and sewer.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, Worth Mills has signed up in support. I think he's here to answer any questions that, if you have any. No one has signed up in opposition, so I'm going to open the hearing. Do we have any questions? Okay, I'm going to close the hearing. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous, clerk.
Thank you. Okay, the next annexation that we have is AX 3222. There's been an applicant error on this. The applicant will need to resubmit the petition. We're suggesting a continuance on this till April 4th. This is one of several annexations that will come forward where Raleigh Fire Department has emergency service delivery concerns. There'll be 5 upcoming, I think 2 on the next agenda on January 24th, and there are 2 that are going before Planning Commission at this time. But we are requesting that is continued to April 14th. The applicant will resubmit the petition, and then we'll put that forward. I can answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Have a motion to move this to April 14th?
Or
Okay, first I'm going to, I don't have to open anything, I'm just
continuing, correct. And one of the things I just want to add is that on some of these annexations coming forward, we're looking at doing a work session. Now, the memo actually that is included with this case and all the others coming forward state that work session would happen on February 21st and then move forward to March. However, we've been informed that we cannot do that work session on February 21st, so we'd be looking at doing a work session on March 14th, which should allow this to be heard on April 4th, and the other cases on April 4th, and that is up to you.
Is it April 4th or 14th?
April 4th. April
Okay.
4th. 4.
I got that wrong. Okay, so April 4th, and that is the request of the applicant?
No.
Okay, so, please.
There you go.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I'm Isabel Maddox here on behalf of Halverson and Harris Development. And Carla Cassabaum and Andy Padiak are with me today. This is a public shopping center on Buffalo Road. And the technicality, we will get that, is just a technical issue. We'll have it back to the city this week. But the more important point here is that we've now learned as of this submission that there's a problem with our annexation, that the city does not deem itself to be able to provide fire service in this area. There are several fire stations within close proximity. We don't really think it's a practical problem, but I know that they want to achieve certain benchmarks in terms of getting vehicles to a potential fire. But the problem for us is this is a project that is, maybe not millions, but over $1 million has been spent on entitlement, on due diligence, on design work. And now we sort of are throwing a monkey wrench into the plans. And it's my understanding that the city can vote to annex or not to annex. And actually, we're fine with either way. We can make it work. But what we're not fine with is having staff members say, oh, you can't submit your SPR. You can't get approvals until it's annexed. And then annex is frozen because there's not, the adequate fire service. And so we would like, one, to have a vote up or down on the annexation. That's our first choice, sooner rather than later, like in February, if possible. Failing that, we'd like clear direction from council to staff that there won't be any delay in any processing of any permits, any submission of permits, any approval of permits or COs, et cetera. And one of the things that makes that kind of complicated is that a lot of times a sign-off is required from various city departments, including fire. And of course, the fire is not going to be wanting to sign off if they can't provide adequate fire service. We think we can get the service in Wake County if we need to, but it's just really late in the game for us to be facing this issue. When we looked around and we see that these are all one-story buildings, there are several fire stations within reasonable proximity. There's good water availability to this site. So we don't really think there's a practical issue here. It's more of a technical issue. But for us, it's really a big-time permitting and processing issue. And we'd like to have the city council deal with that for this case by either voting yes or no on the annexation or at least sending a message about permitting and processing.
Where are they currently receiving fire service from?
Well, it's undeveloped site
Vacant lot.
right now, but there's a Wake County.
If
There's
something
Wake
were
County.
to happen, who would be covering that?
In Wake County, I think there's a New Hope service that's within a 5-minute access.
And because I know that's only one, New Hope is only one station, and I know if they're at one call, then who would cover it if New Hope's not
We
available?
provide mutual aid.
Mutual aid.
In the service area all around the city.
Okay.
And she is right. We're having a work session to talk about this as we continue to grow and develop on the outskirts of the city. That is going to be a capacity issue. And it's not just whether or not we have a fire station close by. It is the staffing of those fire stations as well as equipment. And those costs are exorbitant at this point. So we're going to have a comprehensive conversation as we continue to grow. What does that look like? Whether it is something that we're going to be able to shoulder with our current staffing model, or what is that expense going to be? And typically we run a model to determine how do we cover our cost in that, and when do we recover our costs based on the proposed development that is trying to be annexed.
And I guess the fires concerned are meeting those, what is it, iOS standards?
The ISO rating.
ISO rating.
And currently we have the best that there is. And if we were to lose that rating, then that impacts everybody's insurance, homeowners insurance premiums.
Okay.
The problem is we have gone into this process. We've been through the entitlement process. We're on our 5th round ASR, expecting to submit SPR next month, expecting to start construction ASAP. We've got actually a closing of the land in March. All of this, lots of money riding on this. And, if city wants to deny the annexation, that would be okay. But we just need to have definitive action, or either a clear signal that our permitting and processing, and including COs, will not be delayed because of this issue.
So is that
Yes, we can get a response back to you, but again, I think not before staff brings forward to you all in the work session the conversation about development patterns around the city and what those obligations are going to look like. And so that doesn't resolve her question of whether or not annexation is going to be passed, because ultimately you all probably will not feel comfortable or informed enough to make a decision until we have that work session.
But the work session is now, did I hear April?
We won't have that agenda completely slated until by the end of the week, as I committed in my manager's report.
I mean, that's already jeopardizing a closing we have in March.
Hold on. Is there a way to put this on work session in February? I think what you had said was March.
Correct. Everything that I'm getting indicates March 14th for the work session.
And so the fire chief was here. I don't know if he had to go out and respond to a call because he was in here earlier to answer those questions. But we will, as soon as we have that date definitively, we will get back with you, Ms. Maddox.
Well, the problem is that even if you were to have the work session in February, that doesn't mean there's going to be a resolution in February, or even, it's probably
But people
a
will
long
be
time
informed
out.
enough and able to make a decision. And I think that would, if it's February, you have more time to absorb that, especially if this is moved to April 4th. What they're saying, Isabel, is people won't be informed enough to make a decision if this comes before us earlier.
Can we have a clear directive from manager or council about the fact that a project in the ETJ can seek and get approvals for its various levels of permits and approvals without being annexed?
That would be something that we would work through planning and development services. I'm not in a position to issue a blanket statement that we're going to be able to just approve and give some directives short of knowing the totality of what the requests are, because I'm sure they will be different depending upon the project, depending upon where the project is slated to be located.
Okay,
Pat Young, you can offer anything additional to that if you disagree.
Yeah, good afternoon, Pat Young with Planning and Development. I agree with the manager. There are some permits that we cannot issue unless and until they're signed off on by all of our partner departments, including fire. So that would necessitate that there be some resolution on this issue. So it's a bit of a chicken and the egg. We can continue, as we have done, continue review and have it ready for immediate action after a decision is made. But I don't believe we can sign off on these permits until this issue is resolved.
Okay, Councilmember Melton and then Councilmember Ford.
Yeah, I guess I'm a little confused because you're saying you just want us to vote on it, yes or no, you're fine if we vote no. It sounds like if time is of the essence to you, then a no vote may be more helpful, but what does that have to do with the permits then? Like, if we're not annexing it, then we're not going to provide fire service, right? So then would the fire department have to sign off on anything? I'm just trying to understand why we're stuck on this.
Well, maybe my follow-up will help. Madam City Attorney, can you weigh in and give us some guidance?
Well, I think that anytime that you apply for a development permit, whether it's in or outside of the ETJ, where's Pat? You're going to have to route it through fire, correct? Yes. And so I think the question is, or I think what we don't know the answer to is if you were to say, I'm going to file a development permit application in the ETJ, can't say, oh, well, that's okay because the county is going to provide fire there. That analysis would have to take place. And so if you were to grant the annexation, then we would have an obligation as the city to provide fire service.
If we were to deny it,
then it would still have to go through the process, and fire would have to analyze whether or not they were comfortable checking the box and saying that fire service was fine by the county.
Okay, I was going to say, it sounds like it kind of already knows what box they're going to check on the city side, so then they would just go to the county and get it?
I mean, that's what, right, Isabel? I mean, you would just, I mean, fire would have to go and make sure that if it's in our zoning jurisdiction, that fire service was okay, they would sign off on it. But we wouldn't just have the obligation as the city to provide that because it's in the city limits.
Right. I mean, I think we would undertake that to try to get the county to sign off on fire service. But what I don't want to be is hamstrung because city fire is saying, no, we can't approve it.
Well,
Because
I think
it
the
should just
dilemma,
change the obligation from city to county.
but once you're in, then you're stuck with the city. I mean, maybe you want to withdraw it or take a no might be easier, right?
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at, what Councilmember Melton asked. I mean, can we hold a hearing today and deny it? If that's,
You can, Madam Mayor. Let me make sure I characterize, and the attorney may need to help me here. There was a significant change in North Carolina annexation law in 2010 or 11 that made involuntary annexation essentially impossible. So annexation needs to be voluntary. So if there's an action to deny this, which is certainly your purview and your right, then they, as was just discussed between the attorney and the applicant, they could go to Wake County to get this service. We could continue permitting. We could approve the permit with Wake County Fire Service, but this would be in perpetuity a kind of a donut hole, for lack of a more elegant term, that would not be served by the city. And over time, as those accumulate, it implicates some bigger policy issues about how we want to grow, particularly in this part of town. Which is why we had suggested that there be this work session that go over these issues in more comprehensive detail.
But the problem for today is that it was noticed as contiguous when it's non-contiguous. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's why we can't have it today. It has to be renoticed.
That's right. If it wasn't for the applicant zone error on the we could otherwise. So it could be continued to the next meeting and denied if you all wish, or acted on however you see fit. But I was just addressing the mayor's question.
I will just add that I don't think we're going to solve this problem with, as we continue to grow, how do we provide adequate fire service in sort of these fringe areas. We're not going to solve that with this case, and I don't think we're going to solve it quickly enough to sort of unlock this case. And if the applicant attorney is saying, then just vote it down, then I think what we should do is put this on the next meeting to fix this notice error. We can do whatever we want. It sounds like we're probably going to vote it down. They can proceed with their permits with the county. And if they want to come back and petition for annexation again in the future, maybe once this council or a future council has had time to address some of these service issues, they can do that. It's not like it gets voted down and it's a donut in perpetuity. We have folks all the time that have developed property come to us and ask for services. So I would say, let's set this on the next meeting, fix the notice issue. Sounds like we're going to vote it down at the next meeting, and then they can go deal with the behind-the-scenes people.
well, I think that our planning director has some concerns about that, if I'm reading between the lines, just in terms of creating donut holes. We have some of them in the city, and it's difficult. They use all our services, and they don't pay for any of them. Right.
Might I elaborate on that, Madam Mayor and members of council? My understanding, again, the attorney can assist me, the current Raleigh water policy, not law, is that if an annexation is applied for and denied in the ETJ, extraterritorial jurisdiction, water and sewer utilities are provided. So that would make it unlikely that there would ever be an opportunity to annex the property, and that's fine. I certainly appreciate Councilmember Melton's point that the timing issue is relevant here, and that's for you all to weigh within.
But I would say that if we come in and get services and are not annexed, we're paying out of city rates. So we do pay our share of the cost for water and sewer.
utilities, no property taxes.
Yes, what I'm talking about is property taxes.
Property tax, we do pay the water and sewer at the higher rates.
Yep, but no property taxes, which,
We wouldn't have, the services except for the water and sewer.
Madam
We're
Mayor,
paying double the rates.
My recommendation is that we actually push this off to our. Actually, I'm going to make a motion that we do this at our March 21st meeting. It's after the retreat. It's after our conversation, our work session. I know you don't want it that far out, but I think in the best interest of the city overall, we need to do it on March 21st. So that is my motion.
Second. Looking at staff talking back there. Can I understand if there are any implications to that?
If you could repeat it again, I apologize. I didn't catch all of that.
The motion was to reschedule this to March 21st.
Yeah, that would be fine. So we could do that.
As a public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I think the only implication is we would prefer the opportunity, if it's possible to achieve, and it may or may not be, to have the work session item before March 21st then, so that you all have the full context. And I know there's many other topics that you all are deliberating over. So that would be our request, but it's not necessary or critical. You certainly can hear this on March 21st.
Okay, so we have a motion for March 21st, public hearing with a second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed?
No.
Okay, Councilmember Melton was opposed. Let's just make sure that work session is scheduled. February might be better timing than March. The week before, that's a lot to kind of absorb.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have annexation AX 3622.
Thank you. So this annexation is contiguous and inside the ETJ. It's located at 2001 Pacific Drive. So we're looking at a property of about 10 and a half acres, roughly. The petitioner is looking to construct multifamily apartment on this property, 294 units total. There's water and sewer directly available to the site. It's a subject of several development review cases currently. If annexed today, it'll be brought into the boundaries of Council District A, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Also, zoning on that is RX4 conditional use.
Okay, no one has signed up in support or opposition. Do we have any questions? Okay, I'm going to open the hearing and close the hearing. Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous, clerk. I'm going to ask that we have more participation in motions and seconds, please, so they're not falling on just two people. Keep the meetings moving, or we just sit here. Okay, next annexation, AX 3722. No one has signed up in support or opposition.
Right, thank you. So this annexation is roughly about a half an acre, 0.49. It's located at two addresses, 2708 Sadie Hopkins and 2705 Landis Street. It's zoned R4. It is in the Swift Creek Overlay District. It's classified as new urban, so this project meets the requirements of that overlay district. The plans for that property are residential, a duplex, plus an additional accessory dwelling unit, so for 3 units total. There's water available, there's sewer available about 80 feet from the site. If annexed today, it'll be brought into the boundaries of District D. And I can answer any questions if you have them on that.
Okay, do we have any questions? Okay, I'm going to open the hearing and close the hearing. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. All right, and we had Councilmember Fort second, although Councilmember Patton was close there. So, okay, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. And this last annexation brings us to the end of a very long list of annexations today. Normally, there's less annexations on the agenda, but in this case, it was a bit longer, so we're at number 7. So this property is at 8916 Six Forks Road. It's contiguous and inside the ETJ. It's almost 14 acres. It's zoned R1. It's in the Falls Lake watershed. There were several projects and rezonings associated with this property in the past. However, this particular case, it's a church. It's an institutional use. The zoning is R1. It falls within the confines of that zoning district. There's water and sewer adjacent to that. It would follow the guidelines of the Falls Lake watershed. And if annexed today, it would be brought into the boundaries of Council District A, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Once again, no one has signed up in opposition or in support. So I'm going to open the hearing and close the hearing. Do we have any questions? Okay. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor? Aye. That was unanimous, Clerk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
All right. We often don't have that many annexations, for sure. All right. Next, we have rezoning Z3722. This is Plainview Drive and Polly Street, District C.
Yes, ma'am. This is east of downtown, just outside the Beltline, off south of New Bern Avenue. This is a request to rezone just under an acre from R10 with conditions to residential mixed use with a 3-story height limit and conditions. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. Planning Commission recommends approval. So again, as I mentioned, this is outside the Beltline, just south of New Bern Avenue. You can see the site outlined in yellow here. So this is south of Tower, on the south side of New Bern from Tower Shopping Center, and a number of drive-through restaurant and hotel type businesses along New Bern on the south side there. This is a view of the site from the street. So they have the applicant has offered some conditions here. They've limited the number of residential units. They've prohibited a handful of units here. And then they've made some provisions for exterior materials of new construction. So the change here, they're increasing the maximum residential entitlement, and they are also, because they're switching to the RX district, they could technically have a ground floor corner unit at the intersection of 2 public streets, no more than 4,000 square feet of office use, but they have prohibited retail uses, so they could have some office kind of personal service use, but no retail here, no restaurant. So they have not offered a frontage here, which is inconsistent with the frequent transit area designation on the urban form map. But nonetheless, they are consistent with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan overall. So look at those consistent policies. No inconsistent policies outside the frontage issue were identified. And again, Planning Commission recommends approval. What questions could I answer for you before you hear from the applicant? I do not believe anyone has signed up to speak on this item.
No one has signed up in opposition. Do we have any questions for staff? Okay. I will open the hearing then. We have Matt Paul here for the applicant.
Yep. Good afternoon, Mac Paul, Morningstar Law here on behalf of the applicant, Families Together. We know you have a lot on your agenda, so we're going to try to be expeditious here. I do want to just, I'm going to introduce Zach Shipman, who can tell you about the specific proposal and a little bit more about Families Together. I know many of you have met with the applicant, and I hope that those who have not yet will have that opportunity. Lisa Rowe is very sorry she could not be here today. She's not feeling well today, so she just could not make it. I'm just going to give one little bit of context here. You see the square or the rectangle in red. That's the site we're talking about. It's a very interesting area of the city. I know Councilor Branch is familiar, but for those of you who drive down 64, you would never know this little area exists. And it's kind of a throwback in other pockets around Raleigh that you just are not aware about. But it's an area that the city has worked hard to try to encourage housing, and it's a great opportunity for that. Families Together came here in the mid-90s with a loan from Wake County to build this initial facility. And you see just to the west at the quadrant there at 440 Beltline and 64, there's a large tract. That property was acquired originally for an industrial use and a headquarters. They could not get access to New Bern. It led to a rezoning to accommodate multifamily and a realization that a lot of this area was zoned industrial, even though you have people living in a home on industrial land. And that led to the city coming in, convening the community, working through several years of remapping to support more housing. Last year, the city was a very strong partner with Greystone Affordable Housing Development to see affordable housing come at that large tract there, and Families Together is a partner in a collaboration with them in that project that should be under construction relatively soon. So just within a few years, this area has gone from, very little happening there, and most recently now the TOD coming along New Bern Avenue to having a lot more supportive housing in an important corridor. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Zach Shipman, and he'll just tell you just a little bit about what they're proposing.
Hey, good afternoon, Zach Shipman, Shipman Engineering. I'm a civil engineer working with Families Together on this. Families Together is an organization that seeks to take families out of homelessness and give them more stable housing. They do this through a couple of different housing models that you can see there, rapid rehousing, some transitional housing, shelter, and affordable rentals. This project in particular we're seeking to expand the current facility there. There's 6 existing units on site. When we were going through the site design process, we realized there was an old zoning condition from the early 1990s that capped this property at 8 units. And so the purpose of this rezoning is to get rid of that zoning condition that would allow us to expand that property. You can see kind of a generic site plan there, and then we've got a few architectural renderings that kind of show what the scope and intent is here. So I'd be happy to answer any technical questions that you might have, and again, we appreciate your consideration today. Thanks.
How many additional units do you think you would be able to build?
Right now, we're proposing 3. We've capped the rezoning at 20, just in case they are able to add some additional density in the future. But for now, and the purposes of their funding now, they're going to add 3 is the hope.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Not for the applicant.
Councilmember Patton?
You, on that other slide, you mentioned all those mechanisms through which they provide housing. What are what of these, what are on the property now and what are the proposed 3 units?
So this is temporary housing on the property now, as I understand. The goal was to expand that and to do more units that are temporary housing. So they're not short-term housing, but they're not permanent housing either. So families move into these facilities, they stay for several months, and then they move out when they get more stable housing.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to close the hearing then.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I definitely want to thank Families Together for their work and everything that they do to help our unhoused. I know this is just one piece. I hope staff can I know you work with our Housing and Neighborhoods Department all the time. Look for continued partnership in other ways that maybe we can get you all the way up to 20 units as far as helping people in that transition. So hopefully that's my task out to Housing and Neighborhoods, to work with them to see what we can do, what opportunities are there. And with that said, I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated January 17th, 2023, containing the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda items under recommended action.
Second, and I want to congratulate them on the hard work. I had a chance to meet with them last week, so they're doing a lot of work that's necessary in the community.
Mm-hmm. All in favor? Aye. Right, that was unanimous, clerk. And I just want to thank Families Together for the work they've done. I hope Lisa is feeling better soon. Thank you. All right, next we have Z4622 at 490 Old Pool Road.
Yes, ma'am. This is 4900 Old Pool Road. This is a request to rezone just over 13 acres from R4 to RX5 with a parking limited frontage and conditions. And if you're thinking to yourself, this seems familiar, good, you were paying attention when I talked to you about it on December 6th. Because of some notice issues, I made a staff presentation at that time. I'm happy to walk back through that for you. But we have renoticed this to have a clean public hearing today to remedy the notice errors. The sign was posted with the wrong date for the meeting on the sign. Do apologize for that. So just a reminder, this is the south side of Old Pool Road. You can see there's a large easement, utility easement that runs across this property. There's a lot of residential to the east of this. A couple of views of the site for you. They have prohibited a limited number of uses here. This is increasing the residential entitlement significantly. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan overall, and the Planning Commission does recommend approval. Any questions I could answer for you before you hear from the applicant? I believe there's nobody else signed up to speak on this one.
Any questions? Okay, I'm going to open the hearing, and no one is signed up in opposition. Mac Paul, back at it.
Okay. Good afternoon again. Here on behalf of Rohr's Companies, and again, we'll work through this quickly. This is, I think, a really good example of sort of looking at the housing portfolio in Raleigh and other providers. Rohr's is a company based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They have about 6,000 multifamily units across the country, and they build affordable housing as well as market rate housing. They are new to this market. They're doing a project in Charlotte. They're very interested in this site for a tax credit. There are two types of tax credits. They need to have their zoning in place in order to put their application in, which is the deadline is coming up. It's a 4%, which is one of the offerings that is, if you typically can get that, if you, unlike the 9% option. So they're really excited about this site. They manage their own units, so they don't buy and build and sell. They build a lot, as I said, and they still retain and manage those properties, and they're very nicely amenitized projects. This site, and again, Councilor Branch, I know, has been there. It's in his district. There's a lot of rapid development in the area, but still some of these sites like this, which has a large utility easement running the length of it on one side between the intersection and a townhome development, and then along New Hope Road here on the left side, there's going to be a multi-use path and providing some connectivity from this site to a lot of the amenities in the area. So it's a burgeoning area of the city. Again, this is looking from Old Pool Road. You can see the townhomes on the left. The development would be on the right. But the site really lines up very well for a workforce housing development with the easement area to be suitable for like surface parking, so you don't have to build structured parking, and it saves in cost for the development. There's a stream buffer to where the trees are, so that's a nice buffer there due to the rules in the state that would provide, green space along there between the adjacent development and this development, which would be on the corner. The other quadrants in this corner tend to be more commercial, so this would be a nice complement with a multifamily site and development at Old Pool Road and New Hope. Thanks for helping us get on this agenda, given some of the issues that came up in December and early January. We have CJ Bean here with Urban Design Partners if you have any questions about the site. But again, this is a rezoning, so it's to get the entitlement to do the development and to get the application in. Thank you.
Member Harrison.
Yeah, just two questions. I see there are some inconsistencies, and I wonder if you could address these. Buffering requirements. So there was some mention about having some setbacks, maybe landscaped or forested strips. I see a lot of the property right now is forested. And I can see in the drawing, obviously, there's some forest here, but I was just curious what actually is required in the conditions.
On the southern side, in that tree save area, there's a noose buffer that's 50 feet wide. So we're putting our tree save down there because we can't build in that anyway. On the western side, so that's the bottom of the screen, that's all easement, that's Duke. So we can't have trees there. We can't really do anything there but put parking. Along the north side, like on the back side of these buildings, we're gonna have frontage for Old Pool Road. So there's built out with sidewalk on that side, and then there's sidewalks on South New Hope and the first portion of Old Pool Road. So our setbacks, since we're doing RX5 CU, we have, I believe it's a 10-foot setback from the road for these buildings. However, landscape requirements, when we're up against this right-of-way, we'll have some street trees like dictated by the actual street sections from the city of Raleigh. But other than that, there's not going to be a specific like tree line in between Old Pool and New Hope in the buildings.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'm just not sure what our long-term intent is. A lot of the city, we do have these kind of tree line buffers, Yeah, I don't know.
So where this is located currently, where we will probably have a sidewalk and trees, 18-wheelers park there currently. So there is that whole buffer along the corridor. It's a small section. There really is no tree line on this part between New Hope Road and Pool Road off of Old Pool Road. So that's, for me, I understand, the way our code presents. I think our code covers what they're adding is putting in place what's currently not there.
Okay, that helps. And then I was also curious about the inconsistency on stormwater impacts. It did say in the analysis, I think by staff, that their analysis for stormwater is based on the accommodation of the 100-year flood event, but there's no conditions on that. So just curious how that decision was made.
Right. So I want to go back to your question about the buffering policy. So the concern here about development on this site is really about the transition to these properties on the south side of the site, right? Because of the easement, there's not an expectation or a big concern about the bulk of building adjacent to residential to the east. And so what they have just shown you, they have not committed to that in conditions, but that's their stated intent. They've said it to you in public on the record. It's not a binding condition, but I think Mac wants to keep working in Raleigh, so I expect him to keep his word to you. And then the second question you had was about stormwater. So when this was in front of Planning Commission, and this is a weird administrative thing I'm going to lay on you. Once Planning Commission acts and the assistant director signs the certified recommendation of the Planning Commission, we do not revise the staff report. Any amendment we make is to you in the transmittal memo. So that policy was triggered there. Previously, the applicant had been asked by stormwater staff to complete a stormwater study, and that was based on, I believe it was a 100-year flood, and so subsequently staff had some conversation with the applicant and internally about possibly the need for a zoning condition to reinforce that 100-year threshold as a commitment in the zoning conditions. Ultimately, we decided that that was not necessary, but that was still in consideration at the time of Planning Commission discussion. And so I would say, as far as I know, stormwater staff has no concern at this point in terms of the Ben's back right behind me. He can now contradict anything I've said.
I'm just a closer. I'm just finishing up a good start. The size of this site is large enough that it automatically triggers detention of the 100-year storm per our UDO. So that's why the condition's not there, because it's going to be automatic with our UDO, because it's a large enough site that's big enough portion of this watershed that's near issues of structural flooding that that staff doesn't need a zoning condition to enforce the 100-year storm requirement.
And so with current rules, would they just be sticking to the 10-year? Is that pre and post, or?
They'd go for the 2, 10, 50, and 100-year storm.
So the code
just retention
requires
requirements. Per the code requirement.
Okay.
We have a city code section that if you're upstream of a documented structural flooding case, then you have to go up to the 100-year storm for rate of runoff control. If you're a small portion of that watershed, then that would kind of exempt you from that, but they're not. They're 15% of this watershed that's going to the structural flooding complaint, so they would have to do it per code. So that's why the zoning condition wasn't needed.
So what would they hit? They would get all the way up to 100-year?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councilmember Patton?
Yeah, this is a question for Mac maybe. If the applicant receives this entitlement, what is the intention for the distribution of housing?
My client can speak more to like the unit mix, but 100% of the units will be at 60% AMI, or the area median income.
Any additional questions? Okay, I am going to close the hearing then. Do we have a motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, and I'm glad to see with our only 2 zoning cases for District C today, they're all related to affordable housing. I look forward to the other districts helping me out with affordable housing at multiple levels. So I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated January 17th, 2023, containing the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption effective dates described in the agenda items under recommended action.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. That was unanimous, clerk. Next, we have Z5222 on Globe Road.
Yes, ma'am. This is 10,850 Globe Road. The request is to rezone just over 16 acres from CX3 with a parkway frontage to CX5, so a height increase there, and also changing the frontage to parking limited and adding some conditions. The request is inconsistent with the future land use map and also inconsistent with the plan overall. Nonetheless, Planning Commission recommends approval. So this is on a Globe Road address. in the Briar Creek area. So you can see there's institutional and office here on the south side of Globe Road, and then residential to the east and west here as well. A couple of views of the site. So I want to go back. My understanding is there's an approved site plan on this little pocket in here for a gas station. So they have prohibited a handful of uses here. They have provided for a setback from Globe Road, and that it would be landscaped in accordance with UDO requirements. They are providing direct pedestrian access from the public sidewalk along Globe Road to the primary entrance of each building. So they're basically approximating some conditions like conditions to approximate frontage. They've limited their development scenarios here, and then also provided a condition related to building materials for facades addressing buildings within 150 feet of adjoining parcels. So what's happening here? The residential entitlement is going up. The office and retail entitlement are actually going down here based on the limits they've put on their development scenarios. This is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. So the future land use map here is low-scale residential, and there are a handful of consistent policies here, but the inconsistency with the future land use map and the conditions lining up with that, some concerns about some, I would say kind of paper concerns about density transitions and buffers and infill, given that there's a street proposed through here that I believe that Mr. Myers from Transportation can correct me, I believe will be constructed as part of the development. The need to buffer to the east seems limited, given the setback that the development already has from the property line on the east side, and also the expectation of the road on the east side of the property. And then to the west, this parcel is zoned and future land use map for low-scale residential or low-density residential, but is owned as open space by the homeowners association. So I think the functional need to buffer that is maybe questionable, right? Like the policy set is anticipating that there would be houses there, but we know based on ownership and the current development scenario in the area that it's unlikely that five-story scale development would be adjacent to low-scale residential on that parcel to the west. But this would require a future land use map amendment. You'd be going from that low-scale residential to community mixed use. That's the future land use map designation that corresponds to the commercial mixed use that's requested as the base district here. Planning Commission does recommend approval, and I'm happy to answer questions you might have before you hear from the applicant. There is no one else from the public signed up to speak here.
Do we have any questions? Councilmember Black?
So when you have so many places where it doesn't align with the future maps or future plans, how do you guys kind of come to that decision? And what sort of plans do you have to make in the future around addressing those things? It was like inconsistent on like a few different things.
Right. So this case is somewhat exceptional in that it's inconsistent with the future land use map and the plan overall. So in that case, state law requires us to amend the future land use map at the time of your action if you approve the zoning. So that's one change that would happen. And then I would say those policies about buffering and transition overall, those apply citywide. It's just a matter of how do you interpret them on the individual site-by-site basis. And so I would say technically this case, because the rezoning does not include any particular deference or management of mass adjacent to that residential zoning on either side of the lot. But again, I think that's sort of an academic application of the policy, right? So technically, it is 100% inconsistent with those policies, but functionally, there's not really there's not an expected harm outcome as a result of rezoning and construction of this particular site. You got a gas station in going into the south. You know there's going to be a street to the right. You know the homeowners association is going to hold that land to the east, the right, whatever. The homeowners association is going to own the land to the west. And so while technically the relationship of the zoning districts to each other is inconsistent with a handful of policies, I think the expected physical outcome, it would be hard to project an inconsistent physical outcome.
Okay, so when you say like we have to make the changes to it based off of what we vote on today, is that just for the site itself, or is that like an overarching thing?
So the amendment that would be required is for this particular site. And the other thing I would say is the zoning here is already inconsistent with the future land use map. That's a pre-existing inconsistency that happened with the adoption of the future land use map in 2009. That map reflected a bigger expectation about the patterns of development in Briar Creek when the future land use map was made. There have been some changes to the street plan and also just a sort of a different market approach to some of these parcels than what was originally laid out as part of the sort of the master vision for, or the guiding vision rather, for Briar Creek when it was initiated back, 30 years ago. Yeah. So the only change you'd be making two changes if you approve today. One would be a change to the future land use map to change from that low scale residential to community mixed use. And then the other would be to the zoning map to change the zoning district from the CX3 and Parkway frontage to the CX5 with frontage and conditions. Mm-hmm.
Back when Briar Creek was approved, we weren't talking about community mixed use and walkable communities and whatnot. This is kind of a natural occurrence that we're seeing as our city continues to grow. Looking at how we can create those mixed use opportunities. And so not everything is caught up with where we want to head. Would that be a fair assessment, Bynum?
I think so, yep.
Okay, and City Attorney, you had your hand.
Oh, I was just going to mention something since we did our work session on rezonings last week, that you'll remember with each rezoning, if it's inconsistent, that it's accompanied by a statement about whether it's reasonable and in the public interest. So that is, even though it's inconsistent, your approval is found to be okay because there are extenuating circumstances that still make it reasonable in a public interest to approve it. So there's no requirement that you turn it down. It's just an additional analysis.
And with housing, looking to build more housing, that is definitely in the public interest. So.
And I'd just like to say, just being my district in Briar Creek is a really great opportunity to add housing. We have a very dense area, and I think utilizing the space for that is consistent with what we're aiming to do with increase of housing supply.
Yep.
I did have one quick question. Molly, we had spoken about this specific one, and there was what I really was encouraged about is there was neighborhood meetings. There was a little bit of concern, but can you speak to what changed their minds? What helped get them on board?
So I have to open
sorry.
the hearing.
I'm so sorry.
So
jumping the gun.
let's start by opening the hearing. I don't know if you have any information that you wanted to share first, but Councilman Jones did have that question.
Sure. I think we're talking about the aviation parkway concerns. I do have some slides on that coming up. Is it all right if we simply get to those? Great. Molly Stewart, Morningstar Law Group. Thank you. I'm also here today with Richard Brown from Kimley Horn, engineer on the project, in case we have more detailed questions for him. You heard from Bynum about a few of the factors that make this an unusual site. One other I'd like to note is that in addition to the future land use map calling for that low-scale residential, the existing zoning is commercial mixed use, 3-story. So the requested zoning really amounts to a request for 2 additional stories. I'll talk about the frontage change here in a moment, but that is the heart of the request. And the reason for it is because of some constraints on this site. And here are those constraints, most of them anyway. The primary one being, you see that dashed blue line, that is the extension of Aviation Parkway. We'll talk a little bit more about that one. I'll note that that red line at the bottom, we'll probably come back to this slide, that is the existing Aviation Parkway that dead ends at Globe Road today. It's a limited access highway, but you see that the street type changes as it crosses over Globe Road. So there is not a plan at all to extend it in that form as a limited access highway. There are additional constraints here. One being Briar Creek crossing the site and the greenways and buffers that come with that, as well as a transmission easement over there on the east side of the site. So with all these constraints, the buildable area has been shrunken quite a bit, and that's the reason for the need for the additional 2 stories. The other constraint on the site, this is an approved subdivisions plan for the site, and it shows the primary tree conservation there in the hatching. That amounts to about 22% of the site, well in excess of the standard 10% that's required, just because this is primary tree conservation that's required. So you see that there's actually very little site left with these constraints sort of piling on top of each other here. But to return to the questions about Aviation Parkway, Councilor Jones is absolutely correct that in our neighborhood meetings, to the extent there were concerns, they overwhelmingly were about Aviation Parkway, because the concern was Aviation Parkway would get extended. It would get extended all the way through to the north and make a connection and effectively have a heavily used limited access highway coming through the backyards in this location. And what you can see on this slide, first of all, is that it doesn't extend past the site because this is the only site coming in for zoning at this point and having the subdivision plan. So it doesn't extend onto the north. And if you actually sort of look at that area, it's unlikely to do so without a public project because the site to the north isn't much larger than the right-of-way that's required for it. So it doesn't sort of justify a development project up there. So that was one factor that alleviated a lot of concerns that this is effectively a cul-de-sac, sort of loops around here right back to Globe Road, really only serving this site and not driving sort of large amounts of traffic here. You also see the right-of-way that would be dedicated here for it. There's 2 things going on. One, I mentioned that this is not the limited access highway, and you can see, here we go. This is the street type that's called for here. So this is more of an urban street. You see the bike lanes, you see the sidewalks. So this is more of a typical street, so not that limited access highway. But the other piece that's different about it is that although that's the street section that's required to be dedicated to accommodate the profile I just showed you, under development of just this site, actually what's required to be constructed fits within a small fraction of that right-of-way. So it's a much, much smaller street, one travel lane in each direction and a turning lane. So with those sort of adjustments to the vision of the major highway that I think that neighbors had in their head, those concerns have fallen away. Richard and I are available to answer your questions. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, I am going to close the hearing then.
And this is where I read this, right? I'm going to make a motion to, I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated January 17th, 2023, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda item under recommended action. This approval is also deemed an amendment to the future land use map to the extent described in the adopted consistency statement.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, clerk, that was unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have rezoning Z5722, and again, no one has signed up in opposition.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this is Z5722. This is a handful of parcels on McLean Drive and then some that address on Old Wake Forest Road. The request is to rezone just over 12 acres, it's 14 parcels, from R6 to residential mixed use with a 4-story height limit and conditions. This is consistent with the future land use map and the comprehensive plan overall. Planning Commission recommends approval. This had previously been scheduled for public hearing on the 6th. We didn't get to talk about it because of notice error. Again, I apologize for that. And so new public hearing today, and we're going to talk about this case. So this is northeast of Falls of Neuse, west of the Atlantic and the railroad tracks there. You can see the site outlined in yellow, a couple of views of the site. They have prohibited a couple of uses here and then limited their residential units to no more than 250. So the residential entitlement is going up, and they're adding that 4,000 square foot, could either be office or retail here, as long as that is ground floor corner unit at the intersection of 2 public streets in an apartment building or a mixed-use building. So consistent with the plan overall, and Planning Commission recommends approval. What questions could I answer for you before you open the hearing? I don't believe we have anybody signed up to speak in opposition to this today.
Mayor Pro Tem Branch?
If they had not limited the height, the number of units, the 250, how many units could they do?
I would have to go back and look. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head. I would need to go in.
And there's some you can share with me later. That's fine too.
Okay.
Do we have any other questions? Okay, I'm going to open the hearing. I believe Jamie Schweidler is here on behalf of the applicant.
Good afternoon, Mayor Baldwin and members of council. I'm Jamie Schwadler with 301 Fayetteville Street, Parker Poe, here on behalf of Wood Partners. Caitlin Shelby with Wood Partners is also here with me, as is my colleague, Ashley Terrazas. I'm happy to answer any questions, along with Travis Flewitt from Kimley Horn. This site is a 12.5 acre infill site surrounded by otherwise annexed land, another parcel that you just annexed today. It's across Old Wake Forest Road from some significant commercial existing uses as well as apartment uses. We have additional commercial to the south. And then just to our east, across the train tracks, there are several other industrial properties as you get closer to Atlantic Avenue. And what this proposal would do is take the zoning from R6 to RX4 CU. The request would allow us to put additional residential units in an area that's already walkable to existing commercial, but also be able to provide that commercial or office that's inherent with the RX district. And the reason we're doing that is because this is allowing us to include the apartment type, which is more environmentally sustainable and provides lower energy and carbon output than the otherwise single-family zoning that could be there today, or that is in fact in present today. But it's also consistent with the future land use map. And you just had a discussion about how that guides the future growth here in the city. And the medium scale residential designation shown on the left is what the city decided was appropriate for the site, which envisions the RX zoning with heights up to 3 or 4 stories. So we've chosen the 4-story RX4 designation and incorporated conditions to respond to the context, as well as some of the expectations we heard throughout the process. Note also this is on the edge of the Midtown plan. There are no inconsistent policies noted for the Midtown plan, but there is an expectation to extend Pacific Drive east-west and Craftsman Drive north-south, both of which we intend to do at site plan as required by the code. And while we're talking about the site plan, that is incorporated, those requirements are incorporated because of the street plan. There's also been some additional requirements in terms of tree save that will be required to follow at site plan. We had some questions about what that would mean on this site. And as you can see, the wooded area to the right, there's a large wooded area that would be evaluated for tree conservation. A minimum of 10% of tree conservation area would be required. There's also a riparian buffer in this area. area. And so once we look at those two totals plus the transitional protective yard that's required when you choose an RX district, our undisturbed area is actually approximated to be roughly 20%. So not just the 10% TCA area. Again, those will have to be determined at site plan based on the urban forester determination of what the tree protective area qualifies for. But I just did want to highlight that and call it out. Our conditions include the limitation to 250 units to align with expectations of the increased development that we intend to proceed, and that others have expressed kind of more certainty desired in the area, in addition to some of the prohibited uses that you become accustomed to seeing on cases such as this. So again, the case was found consistent with a number of policies in the comprehensive plan. It was recommended unanimously for approval by the Planning Commission, and we are here before you respectfully requesting approval here today. We're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Hi. So a concern that I had was really around, well, not concern that was given to me or heard was around just like the plans for the proposed roads and the updates around that. Can you speak on that in a little bit more detail?
Sure. So this slide shows the street plan highlighted in different areas with the blue and the purple. The dotted or the dashed purple lines you see going through the site are areas where the city expects us to extend both Pacific Drive, east-west, and Craftsman Drive, north-south, through our site. So at site plan, they'll be looking for us to bring forward a plan that shows the extension, which we would be required to do. We'd also be required, to the extent there isn't a sufficient right-of-way on the edge of our site or abutting our property, we'd be required to dedicate that sufficient right-of-way and then make improvements with the road expansions and sidewalks and things of that nature.
Awesome, thank you. Another concern I had was, and I know that you brought it up during your presentation, specifically around tree conservation. I understand that right now the city has been reworking their tree ordinances for a while, and I'm not entirely sure when that process will be done. I just want to have some understanding that as those ordinances or those tree protections are changing within the next few months, would you guys be culpable to those requirements?
Well, I can defer to the planning director as to when those exactly would come along, but typically when we have zoning conditions and then the code changes and there's something that's greater, the city will look at which requirement is greater. So if it would exceed our zoning condition, the city attorney and the zoning administrator would evaluate which would apply. So I don't know exactly how they're changing, so I don't know how that would impact this particular case, but would invite any feedback from Planning Director Young or the city attorney.
Well, the conditions, to the extent that they're expressed in the case, then they're going to control, because it will be the ordinance that governs this particular parcel. So if there are regulations that are not set forth in the conditions themselves, then you would defer to the UDO. But, the conditions here are the ones that are going to apply to the development. It is the zoning ordinance for this particular property. Anything to add?
Just that, Pat Young again, Planning and Development, just that if there are changes made to the UDO through a UDO text amendment, and those were applicable prior to the submittal of a site plan, then those would bind if there were not conditions associated with trees on this site. And to your earlier question, Councilmember Black, we are in the final stages of drafting those and we'll be coming back before you within the coming months, as you suggested.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understand. So, yes, in short?
If you all adopt changes to the UDO before the applicant submits a site plan associated with this zoning, then they would apply. If it's after, then they would not apply. And as Robin said, if there are conditions on this zoning case, those would apply regardless. Does that make sense?
To just help it a little bit, the zoning conditions are not going to cover every single provision in the UDO. They're going to be certain ones. And so you're going to go back to the UDO for anything that's not expressly written in those conditions themselves, if that makes any sense.
So do we, you said sometime soon, like I think you had a presentation, you said, or you're going to give us an update at the next council meeting on when the possible?
So we don't have that scheduled
Oh, okay.
yet, but it will be soon.
Okay. And do we know when site plans come out? Is that just a question mark too?
So if you all approve this zoning, they can submit a site plan as soon as, at their nearest convenience. It would be up to them when the site plan is
But
submitted.
it's usually not something that happens immediately.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Jones.
Jamie, I know when we talked about this before, we were talking about that this was annexed, and you may have said it and I missed it. Is this a piece of property that still needs to be annexed, or is it, or has it been?
Just like the Pacific parcel that you just rezoned today, it would also need to come back in for an annexation.
Okay. So without that, then we don't have any infrastructure like sidewalks, or that we don't have control of the city. Well, who would be, if it doesn't get annexed? If we approve the rezoning today and then don't annex it, then who handles all of that? They do?
Do you want to handle that, Pat? It's within the ETJ, and so there is existing uses there today that do have some service.
Okay.
Yes. And just to clarify, circling back on the tree canopy, even as today, all of those default provisions in the UDO would apply. So if we were able to turn our site plan around in 2 months, we would have, and you all hadn't adopted an ordinance, we'd still have to follow the existing TCA protections as well as the riparian buffers that are set by the state.
Yeah, the concern with that is just that the city recognizes that our tree canopy protection was inadequate, and that's why they were redoing it. So I'm just trying to figure out the timeline of when the site plan could roll out, tied to when the new ordinance can roll out, what would actually be binding for what you guys have to do. Just thinking about the future of clear cutting and the climate crisis. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I don't believe we'd be in a position to submit a site plan within the next 3 months.
What is the acreage of this again?
12 and a half.
Right, so correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, the new tree ordinance rules would apply for acreage 2 and under?
So Mayor, the current ordinance applies only to subdivisions 2 acres and larger. Part of the draft that's under staff review now is to take that down to 1 acre. So yes.
Okay, so won't change it. The new ordinance will apply to under 2 acres. Right now, we don't have any coverage for under 2 acres. And this is 12 acres. So it applies under the current rules.
And I'll just add to the conversation. I think what's helpful for me is to understand the current rules, because I think, this case, that's what is going to guide its current development. So I think if we have any questions about current tree protections, we could ask them, but we don't really know what could be adopted into the future. So that's really up in the air. So I don't know if you have any other questions on that, Councilmember Black, or, yeah.
I wanted to come back, Mr. Branch, to your question earlier. Our estimates are always very high. The initial an estimate when this came in when it was first submitted was for about 1,500 units. So, and that would have triggered the requirement for a transportation impact analysis. And I know the applicant worked with the transportation staff to find that spot where they would not have to complete the transportation impact analysis at time of rezoning. Mm-hmm.
Do we have any additional questions?
Is this site tied to any transit overlay districts?
I don't believe there's any urban form map. There's no urban form guidance here, which would suggest no. Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, with no other questions, I'm going to close the hearing then. Do we have a motion?
Madam Mayor, I'm going to go sit and I move to approve the proposed consistency statement dated January 17th, 2023 containing the agenda materials, and to approve the agenda amendment with the adoption effective dates described in the agenda items under recommended action.
Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Clerk, that was unanimous. Thank you. All right, next we have rezoning Z 6822. We have one person who signed up in opposition.
This is a request to rezone less than an acre from the office mixed-use district with a 3-story height limit and detached frontage in the North Boylan NCOD to a 7-story height limit with conditions and the transit-oriented development overlay. You can see this is at the northeast corner of Jones and Boylan, just west of Glenwood Avenue. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan overall, and Planning Commission recommends approval. So outline of the site here, and just earlier in the meeting, we scheduled a public hearing for parcels roughly here across the street. A couple of views of the site. So they have offered a condition here after working with their the neighbor in the horseshoe. I think you saw this is kind of a U-shaped parcel. So after working with the neighbor in the horseshoe, and that's who you'll hear from later, they have said that as long as that existing residential use is present at 626 West Jones, then the maximum height of buildings constructed on 628 West Jones within 85 feet of Jones will be no more than 3 stories and 50 feet. So they're limiting what they can do in this area, right? And so the result here is maximum residential units of 205 if they are including affordable units. This property is owned by CASA, and I think we can reasonably expect affordable use there. They also have entitlement here for about 20,000 square feet of office or retail. This is consistent with the comprehensive plan overall. The infill compatibility and protecting neighborhood identity policies are not consistent here. Largely that's tied to the removal of the NCOD. So a lot of our currently adopted UDO would bring about much of the regulation of the North Boylan NCOD. So the prohibition of parking between the building and the street, the requirement for a pedestrian-oriented entrance. What goes away is the limit on height, which is, I would say, the major constraint of the North Boylan NCOD. And so naturally, that's what's triggering these policies. Planning Commission recommends approval, and I'm happy to answer questions you have before you hear from the applicant and the public that have signed up to speak to you.
Any questions for staff? Okay. Like I said, there's one person signed up in opposition. I'm going to open up the hearing. We have someone here for representing the applicant.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm Jess Brandis, Senior Director of Real Estate Development with CASA. We're the applicant. I'm joined by my colleague, Cornelis Verkerk, one of our project managers. I'm going to be very brief. I'm here representing CASA's board, our staff, our residents, and the over 1,000 families and individuals who are currently on our waiting list, waiting for a safe, permanent home. Okay. A little bit about CASA's history and capacity. If you're not familiar with us, we're a local nonprofit. We've been around for 31 years. We currently own and manage 522 multifamily units throughout the Triangle, with 164 actively under construction, including here in Raleigh. And we serve a variety of households in need of affordable housing, particularly people with disabilities and people who've experienced homelessness. Why are we seeking a rezoning today? It's pretty simple. This site is our long-term home. It's been our main office for over 22 years, and this campus is also home currently to 18 affordable CASA apartments, most of which serve households below 30% of area median income. As part of our 2025 strategic plan that our board undertook in 2020, we evaluated all the redevelopment potential for all of our real estate assets, allowing us to create more units with the land we currently own and control. And we feel that this site represents an exceptional opportunity to increase density and create many more homes for folks downtown. Rezoning the site allows us to increase that flexibility. That's that middle bullet point. Gives us more flexibility in how we redevelop that site and allows for more units, therefore creating more permanent affordable homes, which is CASA's mission. So Cornelis and I are here for questions.
Okay, do we have any questions? Councilmember Patton.
Thanks so much. Can you remind me how many units, or what's the intention for how many more units you would create if you received the entitlement tonight?
I believe the envision analysis that flashed up very briefly showed about 205 with the TOD. 205 with the TOD.
And you're planning to get to that? You want to try to accomplish
That is our
much?
goal.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I'm going to, someone has signed up to speak in opposition, Chad Wilkins.
Good afternoon, Mayor Baldwin and council members. I appreciate you hearing me out. I've come before you guys a couple of times before in other cases. I've also been in front of the Planning Commission, mostly regarding development that's going on in North Portland Overlay District. I have gone through and basically talked about the unique character of the neighborhood, historic relevance, how it's really filling a great need for our neighborhood and our city. But I'm not going to really go through those today because it hasn't really gotten much traction. So with that said, I think what I want to do is just kind of go through a timeline on how I ended up here. I think CASA is a great group. We've been neighbors for almost 20 years, and actually over the 20 years. And I think what they're doing is awesome, and I'm definitely pro-development with reason. When scale gets out of proportion, it doesn't really make sense when you put 7-story buildings next to 2-story buildings. So basically going backwards in time here, in 2019, we sat down and started talking about their development plans, and they had reached out and said, we want to do our campus here. What do you think? Are you interested in selling? And I was like, well, I'm not really interested in selling. And my thought was, well, NCOD is still here, and that really limits them to 24 feet or up to 40, depending on the roof line. And so it didn't really sound like it was going to be infringing too much on the space that I have there. And so I just declined. And so moving forward all the way up into 2021, as you guys know, catty corner to that, there was a redevelopment that was passed that went from 3 to 7 stories. And so, of course, that triggered a huge wave of development in that neighborhood. And so they came back to me and said, hey, things are turning in our favor. We're going to go to 7 stories now. Are you interested in joining? And I declined again and said, well, I kind of want to see what's going to happen with the Planning Commission. So we went to the Planning Commission and discussed what was happening there. And they felt that the horseshoe around my house was pretty extreme. And so we decided to take a step back, and they came back with some conditions, which was wonderful. But the downside is that the condition that was offered was a 50-foot building on the west side, which really doesn't change the horseshoe effect of being kind of locked in that. And also with that condition, that space is interesting because I have a easement that runs behind it. And so it's almost like this little orphan house that sits there. And so I didn't really feel like they could develop it regardless because of the tree line that comes along, as well as the easement that's behind it. So I sent you guys information. I unfortunately had visuals, but they didn't make it into the server. So I sent you guys a quick little summary and some pictures that you can review that was in your email. I also reached out to Councilmember Harrison because she's in the district here, and just trying to figure out a path forward. So really what I'm asking here is, my goal would be to find out a middle path where my property could coexist along CASA's property in some future development. And the one that's currently offered isn't really going to work for the longevity for my building. It's just going to basically rot away because it's going to be surrounded on all sides by a minimum of 90 feet. And so that just, if you look at a 25-foot building and a 90 foot building, and that's not including the TOD from 7 to 11 stories. That's even larger. I just can't see how that's workable. So what I'm hoping to do, and I don't blame them, they wanted to come in and see if you guys would approve it as is. And if you guys do, then that's how we are. My recommendation is not to decline this either. I'd like to defer it for a couple weeks and see if we can find some sort of middle ground. I'd offered some suggestions, and they felt that the suggestions I made didn't fit with their long-term plan. So I'm hoping that you guys can look at this and decide that there might be a middle ground, that both of our properties could coexist. And so I'll reserve the rest of the time to answer any questions you guys might have about some ideas. And I did bring some, but I don't know if it's even relevant. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions?
I just
Mayor
have
Pro Tem Branch?
just a question. When you, as far as your property,
Yes.
Are there any plans, if so, for yours, or you plan on leaving it as is for a while?
My plan is to leave it as is. It's a triplex multifamily.
Okay.
Built in 1920.
Any additional questions? Okay, thank you. I'm going to close the hearing then. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated January 17th, 2023, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda item under recommended action.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion was unanimous, clerk. Thank you. I just want to I want to thank CASA for the incredible work that you do, especially with our veterans and disabled residents. It's deeply appreciated. Thank you. Next is Z7122, and again, no one has signed up in opposition.
This is a request to rezone just under an acre at 849 West Morgan Street. This is going from OX5 with an urban limited frontage and the special residential parking overlay district to CX5. They're keeping the height and the urban limited frontage. They're adding some conditions, and the special residential parking overlay district would remain in place. This request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, but it's inconsistent with future land use map, and Planning Commission recommends approval. So this is on the south side of West Morgan, just at the bend there between Hillsborough and St. Mary's, and it backs up to the prison. So here's the site outlined for you. There are actually 3 residential structures on this parcel, and my understanding is the applicant intends to retain the structures and use them for commercial use. They have prohibited some uses that otherwise would be allowed in the CX district: fuel sales, adult establishment, self-service storage, car wash, and vehicle repair. And frankly, on less than an acre, it's hard to imagine accomplishing a lot of that. So the change in residential entitlement here, there's no change. The height's not changing. So we still think they can only probably get 10 units here. And similarly, the office square footage and retail square footage not changing. Consistent with the comprehensive plan, inconsistent with the future land use map here. The future land use map envisions office and residential mixed use, and so they're adding in that commercial blend of uses, which is what makes it inconsistent with that commercial community mixed use on the future land use map. They're rezoning to commercial mixed use, but consistent with the urban form map and consistent with the plan overall. Would require, this is not the right picture, but it would require an amendment from the office residential mixed use designation to the community mixed use on the future land use map. What questions could I answer for you before you hear from the applicant?
Any questions? Councilmember Patton?
How are the current structures being used right now? Are they residential? They have tenants in them?
I believe they're vacant. That would be a better question for the applicant.
Okay, I'll hold till then.
Okay, any other questions of staff? Okay, no one has signed up in opposition. I'm going to open the hearing. We have Mark Frederick and David Meeker who've signed up to speak.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of council. I'm Mark Frederick with Parker Poe, Adams and Bernstein at 301 Fayetteville Street. I'm also joined by David Meeker and Kate Charland of Carpenter Development. And before I get into the more technical aspects of this request, I'd like to turn it over to David Meeker to explain a little bit more about the vision for this project.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. It's great to be here. This is a skinny piece of property between West Morgan Street and the railroad. Not a lot of opportunity to go vertical or do any housing there. So if you can't do that, the best thing is to restore them. And our plan is to renovate the 3 homes, sort of connect them a little bit with a deck. Currently, this is preliminary, but have a coffee shop in one, a casual food concept in the middle, and then a neighborhood bar. We think it'll help a lot with the walkability between sort of downtown West Morgan and Hillsborough Street. It's a really dark section right now, and having some development on the bend there should be helpful.
So the issue we ran into when starting to look at this site was that the proposed uses, mainly the restaurant use, is actually restricted in the OX district to be within a multi-tenant building. So the purpose of this request is to just change that base zoning district to CX, which would allow the reuse of these structures for the restaurant use. This request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the West Morgan area plan. So we respectfully request that you approve this case. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Councilmember Patton?
I'm just restate my question to staff. What's in the structures right now? Are they vacant? Are there tenants?
So they're vacant now. The last use was a church was in one, and then the other 2 were used for storage. We bought it from the church owner, and they've been vacant since we've had them.
Councilmember Melton?
This is not a question for the applicant, but it's just something that I notice sometimes where, the plan that they have for these properties I think is great, but they had to go through all this extra work just to get it rezoned so they could put a coffee shop and a restaurant and a neighborhood bar. And we're going to have one coming up soon. I think we're all familiar with Miss Peacock's case where she's trying to reopen her family store to be a healthy neighborhood market, and she also has had to go through this whole process. And so if we want to build walkable, mixed-use communities, I think we still have to be looking for ways we can tweak our code so folks don't have to come in every time with the resources and time it takes to do this. I'm just flagging that for staff. I don't know if there's an opportunity for further discussion, but I think this case is great, and I do think it's unfortunate that you had to do this extra technical rezoning is really what it was. You had to rezone it just to maintain these 3 structures and create a more walkable environment.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, I'm going to close the hearing. Councilmember Harrison?
Yeah, I'd like to move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated January 17th, 2023, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning amendment with the adoption and effective dates described in the agenda item under recommended action. This approval is also deemed an amendment to the future land use map to the extent described in the adopted consistency statement. I look forward to going to your coffee shop and restaurant.
Second. All right, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you for being creative and bringing new life to that area. All right, next we have text change 622, treatment plants. No one has signed up in support or opposition.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council. My name is Justin Remetta. I'm with Planning and Development, here to present text change TC 622. As the name implies, it's related to water and wastewater treatment plants. So this is a proposal that was initiated originally by the Raleigh Water Department and authorized by the council back in June of last year. Did want to point out before going into some of this background, since this is a text amendment, technically it does apply globally, citywide. However, these changes really are intended to address some specific needs and future expansions at the E.M. Johnson Water Treatment Plant. So prior to the UDO being adopted in 2013, governmentally owned treatment plants were permitted as general uses, meaning by right in all residential zoning districts. The UDO, with its adoption, then reclassified these uses as major utilities and limited them to the IX, or industrial mixed use, and IH, heavy industrial zoning districts. It did also require the issuance of a special use permit by the Board of Adjustment in those areas. And this, the adoption of the UDO had the effect of rendering the existing E.M. Johnson plant as a nonconformity. As you may know, the UDO does impose some limitations on the expansions of nonconforming uses, which is kind of hindering these proposed improvements at the plant that are really required to comply with EPA regulations, including lead and copper rules for drinking water. So here's an aerial view of the existing E.M. Johnson plant. As you can see, it's just about 110 acres there and located at the intersection of Raven Ridge Road and Falls of Neuse Road. And so a summary of the proposed changes, they include allowing treatment plants that are governmentally owned as a limited use in the R1, IX, and IH districts. So limited use here means that the use is allowed following an administrative review that confirms that certain use standards are being met. And in this case, there are two use standards being proposed. The first is that the plant is actually owned or operated by a governmental entity. The second there is that buildings taller than 40 feet or 3 stories will need to be set back at least 100 feet from adjacent property lines. And this chart shows the dimensional standards that would apply, including lot width, depth, setbacks. You can see there would be 50-foot setbacks from streets, 30-foot setbacks from side and rear property lines. Dimensional standards continued here with parking setbacks that mirror those of the buildings and a maximum overall height limit of 68 feet and 4 stories. Some other changes include reducing the required forestation percentage in watershed protection overlay districts in which E.M. Johnson is located from 40% to 15%, mostly due to the existing conditions on the site and the needed expansion areas. And then treating the expansion of these existing plants as Tier 1 site plans. All site plans are regulated on a sliding scale from 1 to 3, with Tier 1 being kind of the least intensive, fewest regulations, up to Tier 3 being the most intense. Most development regulations. So did want to point out a mostly unrelated change with this is the updating of section 1.4.2. It's a table that shows the allowable building types by zoning district. This table was actually included as part of the recent omnibus text change that was adopted, but due to a codification error, it didn't make it into the adopted ordinance, so we're just including it here as a cleanup item. The table is really used as kind of a quick reference guide by staff and by users to determine where specific building types can be located. It's more of an explanatory tool than a regulatory tool, but did just want to point that out. And finally, wanted to point out two small changes that staff did make after the Planning Commission review as minor clarifications. There were some formatting issues with that table that I just mentioned where a few rows were deleted, so we added those back in. And then we did make clear that only expansions of existing facilities would be treated as Tier 1 site plans. So in the unlikely event that a new facility is constructed in the future, depending on its scope and scale, it would be either a Tier 2 or Tier 3 site plan. Planning Commission approved the amendment unanimously, 8-0 at their December 13th meeting. And at this time, I'm happy to try and answer any questions. I did want to point out we do have some representation from Raleigh Water here as well, who can answer any technical questions.
Okay, who has, okay, Councilmember Branch?
Yeah, just one question. How much of the current area is forested now? I know there's a lot of open area. Just trying to get an idea.
Yeah, I think we did have some slides for that, but it is, unfortunately I don't see them. I think it's in the range of 15 to 20%.
Currently?
Currently,
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
Any other questions? Councilmember Harrison?
So when you say 15 to 20% of the current area is covered by trees, but then am I mistaken, if we're in a watershed protection overlay district, 40% would need to be tree covered?
That is the current rule today. Yeah, what's being proposed would be to limit for this specific use only in a watershed protection overlay district to 15%.
And so this would affect for water treatment plants everywhere across the city, right? Or just in this site?
Technically, it would apply globally. It's my understanding. So E.M. Johnson's the only existing plant in the city's planning jurisdiction today, so there are no other ones. In the event a new one was to be constructed and it were located in a watershed protection overlay district, then the same 15% rule would apply.
Are there any plans for that?
I defer that question to my colleagues in Raleigh Water, but none that I know of.
No.
Good afternoon. Currently, we do have plans, long-range plans for new water treatment plants, but none of those are in the Raleigh ETJ. You may know that we have reserved land in the Little River watershed, so there is a potential for a new water treatment plant in that area. There's also a potential for a new water treatment plant adjacent to the Neuse River wastewater treatment plant. One of the water supply plans contemplates withdrawing water from Neuse River just upstream of the wastewater plant discharge. That area is currently outside the ETJ as well.
And even though it's outside the ETJ, this text change would still affect it? Or no?
It would only affect places inside the ETJ.
Okay, all right,
Yes.
I gotcha. Yep. Okay, so this changing to 15% set aside for a watershed protection overlay district is really, right now, hypothetical. I mean, it would be in the text, but...
It is. And I would like to point out that we have a watershed protection program where we collect fees to support protection inside Falls Lake. To date, we have secured protection of over 11,000 acres in the Falls Lake watershed and over 100 miles of streams. And so that is something we are actively doing all the time to maintain and preserve that watershed.
So even though there's no plan to put a plant in that overlay district, was this just kind of there as just to give you all a little bit of leg room in terms of?
Yes, we do have plans. Our most immediate needs are upgrades to our generator facilities, emergency power. We would need to expand our chemical campus. We've got some enhancements we want to make for our corrosion control for lead and copper rule. So, and then there will be potentially new treatment in some other areas down the road.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions? Councilmember Patton?
Yeah, I have two. One, in our agenda backup, there's one comment from a resident regarding smell and concern about smell. So just for the sake of setting the public's mind at ease, can you address any issues that might be related to smells, odors?
You're going to have to ask Whit to come back up and answer that, but my understanding was that question was about a wastewater treatment plant, and this is a water treatment plant. So I don't know that the same concerns would exist.
Yeah. Okay. And then my second question, I'm thinking back to the map that we saw at our last work session about how many properties are zoned for R1 currently in the city. I think it's very few, but can you confirm roughly how many properties are?
I can't confirm a number for you, unfortunately. I'm happy to get that for you, but it is certainly a lesser amount than the other R zone districts. For example, R4 through R10. It is really reserved and utilized mostly in the watershed areas. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, as I said, no one has signed up in support or opposition. I'm going to open the hearing and close it. Do we have a motion?
I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated January 17th, 2023, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning text amendment.
Do we have a second? Councilmember Patton has seconded. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, clerk, that was unanimous. Next, we have text change 822, self-storage in Office Park. And we have Worth Mills here to speak in support. No one has signed up in opposition.
So TC8 is a proposal to add the self-service storage use as a limited use in the OP or Office Park District. Kind of in contrast to the item that you just heard and most of the text changes you see, this is an externally requested text change, so meaning it didn't originate from a directive of council or from a recommendation of staff. Rather, it came from a member of the public. So self-service storage is a defined term in the code, as you see here. They are facilities that are providing separate storage areas for personal or business use, and they're designed to allow private access by the tenant for storing or removing personal property. And here you can see how these uses are currently regulated under the code today. The image on the slide there is of the table of permitted uses. It shows that they are allowed as limited uses in the NX or neighborhood mixed use district, CX commercial mixed use, and IX industrial mixed use, and they're permitted by right in the IH or heavy industrial district. Where it is a limited use, those use standards include a minimum site size, landscape buffer requirements, and a provision that the units must be in an enclosed building and internally accessed only. What the applicant is proposing here is to allow the use as a limited use in the OP district with a host of use standards that I can briefly cover. The first two you see on the screen there require the storage to be within a fully enclosed building and accessed internally. The third item, C, prohibits ground floor storage where there is an urban frontage that is applied. Outdoor storage of boats, RVs, etc. would all be prohibited. Landscape protective yards would be required where the property is adjacent to residential uses. So these yards are generally between 20 and 35 feet wide. They consist of a wall or a fence in addition to landscaping material. Item F prohibits the use along or near a rail corridor. This is a standard that you may recall has been used recently in other amendments to keep certain uses separated from potential future commuter rail lines. G limits height to 5 stories. H reduces transparency requirements to a minimum of 10%, a maximum of 20%. This was an item that council mentioned when the initial change was authorized. The standard I requires screening of internal light sources and requires sensor lighting with automatic shutoff times for upper stories. And finally, the last standard here limits the amount of land area within a contiguous area zoned OP devoted to self-service storage to 10% maximum, but it does stipulate that at least one self-service storage use can be provided in each area, provided there are multiple parcels involved. And I did just want to, before concluding, provide some background on the Office Park District itself. It is one of the smaller districts in terms of land area that we have. There's approximately 322 acres of it throughout the city. It's intended to preserve and provide land for office and employment uses. It can also serve as a transition between the mixed-use districts and the residential neighborhoods. And those 322 acres are scattered throughout the city in 5 areas. You have the Forum Drive Colonnade Center area along Six Forks, the Highwoods area near 440 and Capitol Boulevard, Crabtree Mall and I-440 area on the left, and then a few scattered sites in Briar Creek on the right. And then the last area is the Corporate Center area between Corporate Center Drive and I-40. And I'm happy to try and answer any questions you might have. Planning Commission did vote unanimously 8-0 to approve in December. And Mr. Mills is here to answer any questions should you wish to hear from him.
Do we have any questions for staff? Councilmember Patton?
you go back to that slide that addresses when there are multiple parcels in play? Yeah, can you just run back through that one?
Yeah, so what this standard says is that in an area, a contiguous area that is zoned office park, no more than 10% of that land area can be devoted to self-service storage uses. It goes on to say that, however, as long as there is more than one parcel that is zoned OP in that assemblage, there can be at least one use in each separate area.
So if there were 5 parcels, all 5 of them could have a tiny self-storage as long as the totality of self-storage across the 5 is only 10%?
So it's the 10% is a maximum land area, not parcel calculation, and so it'd be unlikely that you could have. It's 10% of the total land area zoned RP, not the total parcels.
Are there any other examples of land use where like one parcel could kind of lay claim in this way? Like, you know, I'm imagining if there's 5 parcels in an office park and one parcel wants to build, then they have now consumed, they probably are likely to have consumed the full 10% that's available. Are there any other examples where we do that?
I can't think of another example off the top of my head. I will say that it's intentionally that way because the purpose is to limit the amount, since an office park is generally supposed to be devoted to uses that generate employment. That's the whole purpose of the district. I think it is intentional here to kind of limit the total land area that can be used for storage.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, I'm going to open the hearing. No one has signed up in opposition. Worth Mills has asked to speak in favor.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. Worth Mills with Longleaf Law Partners. Mr. Rometta did a great job of outlining what the text change is and the OP district itself. So I'll say that this text change serves 2 benefits within the OP district. One, it increases the development potential for an OP district in a market that has now been affected by COVID. The employment demand, the office demand within these centers is not what it was prior to the pandemic. So it gives another option for land uses within that zoning district. And 2, it complements the main goal of Office Park, which is to reserve land area for those office and employment opportunities. The 10% stipulation that Mr. Rometta just covered was in response to some concerns we heard at City Council when this was authorized back in September. Council did not want this text change to fundamentally alter what the OP district is intended for, and so that in and of itself is why we wanted to include that 10% cap. There are available zoning districts such as CX, DX, or IX that total much more land area than the OP district does, which are also available opportunities for self-service storage that don't have that 10% cap. But again, we think that this is a great ancillary use for the office and employment center function of the OP district. Happy to answer any questions that you have and appreciate your time this afternoon.
Do we have any questions? Okay, I'm going to close the hearing. Do we have a motion? Councilmember Melton.
I move to adopt the proposed consistency statement dated January 17th, 2023, contained in the agenda materials, and to approve the zoning text amendment.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. That was unanimous, clerk. Okay, thank you. Oof. We survived that. Now on to committee reports, of which there are none because we haven't sent anything to committee yet. So we'll get right to the reports from mayor and council. I'll start with Councilor Melton this time.
Yeah, I just have one item. Referenced this a minute ago, but Jessica Peacock has a case on our agenda for February 7th. It's Z7422. She's asked that we hold that as a special item on February 7th so that she can submit some new conditions, and then we would do the public hearing at a later date. And so I'd just like to make that request for her now, to move that to a special item.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, clerk, that was unanimous. Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Patton?
Yeah, I just have two quick things. This weekend, I had the opportunity to attend the Lunar New Year celebration hosted by the Vietnamese American Association of Raleigh. They were amazing hosts. The organizations that participated did amazing work, and so I just wanted to shout them out. And then my second item is that through the course of handling a constituent concern, I became aware that the UDO does not have a definition of crawl space development of housing. And so that just seemed like a clerical issue, and I wondered if we had an opportunity to correct that. Pat, if you could maybe speak to it.
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember Patton, and certainly Councilmember Patton is right. There's not currently a definition of crawl space. Occasionally there are conditions that reference crawl spaces, and it makes it challenging for staff to apply that condition when there's not a definition. So we certainly would support an effort to include that and would recommend that it be part of the omnibus changes that are coming in the near future.
Thank you. Councilmember Black?
Yes, today I just had one thing, just something I've been thinking about. So I believe young people save democracy. 2 elections in a row, millennials and Gen Z have shown up for progressive values that have kept our democracy and our future intact. As a zillennial, I feel the immense weight and anxiety this generation feels around the mental health crisis, student loans, the housing crisis, as well as the climate crisis, just to name a few things. I also have the lived experiences of feeling the divide around the decisions that are being made that are critical for our future that also seem to lack youth perspectives. In 2019, Durham created the Office of Youth as a division of the city manager's office that provides direction on youth initiatives in Durham. This office also works with youth, families, city, and county staff on leadership and community partners to elevate youth voices and enhance services for youth programs. While I have been made aware that Raleigh has a youth council, I do not believe that it provides a voice for the college students and recent graduates that live in the city, some of which are grappling with the realities of being full-time students in a city where affordable student housing looks like 160 square foot apartments priced at $1,000. I would like to propose the creation of a youth commission for people in our city age 18 to 25, and I would like to ask city staff or city manager, I'm not sure how it works, to provide a report on the creation of a youth commission and a youth office using Durham as a model and a reference point for what Raleigh could do. I think it's important that the city be proactive to the deep need to expand and uplift youth voices on the city level. And we have to show up for youth in the same way they have shown up for us thoughtfully time and time again.
Thank you. Councilmember Branch? Mayor Pro Tem Branch, I'm sorry.
Actually, the only thing I want to say is I want to thank staff, thank the community and then everyone for yesterday. I know we had a march downtown yesterday where some city services were used. Everything went off without a hitch. There are a lot of service projects out in our community. So I just want to thank everyone. Just remember that service is every day and not just on MLK Day.
Councilmember Jones?
I have 3 quick things. First, I want to just mention the district meetings that I've been holding. We did ours last week at Bowstring Pizza and Brew Yard. So I just want to thank all of the District E businesses that have helped host our community conversations, and we look forward to doing the next one, which will be February 7th, and location is to be announced. So if you're in District E and you like to host one, please get with me. The next thing I talked to City Manager Marshall last week about, and in the scope of the 5-point streetscape study, I was just wanting to ensure that we reached out to Wake County Public Schools, because I know one of the options in that study would really affect the carpool lane of Underwood Elementary, and just wanted to bring that up to attention. I know that we've already discussed it, just want to mention it. And then my last thing, it has come to my attention in discussions with residents that previously a few have been removed from public comment in regards to reparative justice, and we're told that there would be a public meeting. I have two questions. When is the public meeting scheduled? And then two, what is the process that we do of removing anyone from speaking? I wasn't aware that that was a process until that came up this week.
When you say reparative justice, do you mean reparations?
Yes.
Or work session on reparations?
Yes.
So
That's what they were told.
To my knowledge, based on the draft agenda, we don't have a work session scheduled dealing with reparations. And our office doesn't assign or remove folks from the comment list. That would be the clerk's office. However, I don't know if the clerk's office would have removed anybody for a work session that we don't have.
Right. It was back in, I don't want to say December, November. It was before I was on council, but residents have reached out saying that they had received an email saying that they had been removed from public comments because there was going to be a work session scheduled on reparative justice. And I was a little bit confused. I was like, I've never heard of somebody being removed from public comments.
Yes, this did occur sometime in the late spring or late summer or fall that we had a number of people signed up under public comment to address the issue. And we were asked to advise them that there would be a public hearing scheduled for a later date. And that it's my understanding the public hearing was to be recommended from the Human Relations Commission. However, it was not on their work plan, and so we did not, it has not occurred.
It has not occurred. Okay, so then what is that? How do people get removed from a public comment? Somebody who requests, I don't understand that.
It's a very unusual situation, and to my knowledge, the only time it's ever occurred.
Okay, so it's an anomaly. All right. So is the process, I should reach out to Human Relations Commission to ask what should I be doing right now?
Let me do some research on that, and I'll get back to you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And that's all.
Councilmember Fort.
Thank you. I have a couple things. First, it was a busy weekend with a number of Martin Luther King celebrations over the weekend. I want to shout out Councilmember Jones, who showed up for an event I was emceeing on Sunday, so I appreciate that support. Got a couple of updates. As relates to the homelessness prevention and diversion pilot program, just want to give the community an update. The city is currently seeking proposals from local nonprofit organizations to administer the city's homelessness prevention and diversion pilot program. Financial assistance will be offered through the program to eligible households. It'll be limited at $2,500 per household. And the funds can be used to help with homelessness prevention, diversion, or exit support. The request for proposals is posted on the city's website and can be found by going to the Procurement Division's webpage and clicking on the current bidding and contracting opportunities link. Responses are due no later than next Tuesday, January 24th at 3 p.m. And if you have any questions, you can contact the Housing and Neighborhoods Department. Secondly, I passed out to the members of the council. Several of us attended the ribbon cutting for the Wake County Legal Support Center last Friday afternoon. And as of Friday, when they did the ribbon cutting, they had actually served about 60 individuals. And the overwhelming number of folks who've been served are actually Raleigh residents. And in this particular program, this Legal Services Center serves as a resource hub for folks who are self-representing in civil legal matters. The staff will operate as legal navigators for folks who are self-represented, and provide access to legal forms and information packages to address common legal matters like family law and housing, while partnering with community organizations to provide free legal clinics. So in essence, what happens, there are people who come into the courthouse and the matters that they have are not matters that they can get court-appointed counsel for, but they need assistance. So it may be a family law case, child support, custody, a divorce matter. Some people want to represent themselves as it relates to housing issues with evictions and things along those lines. And so this actual center is used to kind of give people guidance and support because they can't afford Jonathan or other folks who practice law.
Or Stormy.
or me. And so Judge Ashley Parker Dunstan, this was her brainchild. She talked to a number of us in the community about it starting this past summer, and so it actually came to fruition last week. The county has chipped in money. Some of the other local municipalities are going to chip in money. But like I indicated, so far the majority of the people who are using the service are residents of Raleigh. So they are making an ask that we chip in some money as well. And so I wanted to do two things. First, I wanted to invite Judge Dunstan to actually come and address the council, maybe at our next meeting in February, to explain a little bit more. Y'all have the opportunity to ask us some questions, but then I also wanted staff to identify maybe about $50,000 of funding that we could possibly chip in to support and give us an opportunity to weigh in on that as well.
There is money in council contingency, and that is usually the way we would pay for something like that. Council Mayor Pro Tem Branch, did you?
No, I was just going to say that thank you, Councilor Ford, for bringing it up. I was at attendance as well as the ribbon cutting as things are moving forward. And the other part I want to look at, they made a comment about maybe doing clinics and things and throughout. If we could have maybe our park staff work with them while they're looking for space, since so many of the residents are from the city of Raleigh, whenever they get ready to go out in the community to see what resources we may have available to assist that can help residents meet them near bus lines and things of that nature. So definitely I look forward to supporting us doing our part here. Once again, great job.
Councilmember Fort, do you want to make a motion?
So it'd be, I guess, a two-part motion. The first part to invite Judge Dunstan to come to our next meeting and give us a brief overview of the program. And then the second part of the motion would be for staff to identify about $50,000 that the city could allocate to support this opportunity.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. Clerk? Councilmember Harrelson.
Yeah, in District D, I just wanted to mention that there have been some concerns around drinking water quality around Western Boulevard with the water main break. I know folks are familiar. And I think there's some continued concerns. I saw posts yesterday about orange and muddy drinking water in the Avon Ferry West neighborhood. And I think for folks who have called in, they've been told that the water is safe. But I just was hoping to get, if anyone has an immediate response, because I'm getting a lot of calls and concerns about this, I'd appreciate it. And also just a few thoughts on our communications when there is a concern. I think some folks who received information about the drinking water advisory, they were on the map that was provided by Raleigh Water, but then there were other folks who did have a loss in drinking water pressure, and so they were concerned, and then when they called to ask, they were also told to be careful and perhaps boil their water. And then they started telling other people, hey, you better boil your water even though you're not on the map. And it just became like a who knows what you're supposed to do situation. And so I just would be curious to get a report from Raleigh Water about the situation there, safety of current drinking water in the area, and kind of just how that communications is being conveyed both accurately and in a timely fashion. Thank you.
Thank you. I have two items. Raleigh Housing Authority reached out to me and asked if we would name a liaison. They have not had one in several years. And they have a new CEO coming on board, and that they want to do things a little differently. So I have asked Councilmember Fort if she would serve as the liaison, and she has said yes. So wanted to report that out. And then a Future Cities Middle School competition is coming up on Saturday. I will be there to present an award, but they asked if any members of staff would be interested in serving as judges for this. They would need to be there in the morning. And I was thinking people who, deal with future cities work might be interested. Like,
Sure, we can get, how many?
I think they said about 4.
I'll volunteer 4 of us.
You mean voluntold?
No, volunteer. I try not to put too much on them.
Okay.
We can put together a team, yes.
Okay. And I will get more details and share that with you.
Okay.
Okay. It's at the McKimmon Center, and I'll get exact times.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next, we have appointments. Clerk?
The first item is Environmental Advisory Board, 1 regular vacancy. Lamia King received 4 votes, Tessa Mundy received 3 votes, and Councilmember Black nominated Bob Gilbert. So the 3 will be on the ballot for next time for consideration of voting or adding additional nominees. Historic Cemeteries Advisory Board, 1 regular vacancy. Councilmember Jones nominated Curtis Archer, so that'll be on the next agenda. Historical Resources and Museums Advisory Board, 1 regular vacancy. Paul Brinkman received 4 votes. Samari Slade received 4 votes. So there were no write-ins, but those 2 will be on the ballot for next time for vote or additional nominees. Parks, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board, 1 regular vacancy. Shaween Liu received 8 votes, so would be appointed. So right this minute, we have a full Parks, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board, but we do have some vacancies coming up. Police Advisory Board, 1 regular vacancy. Victim Advocate Malloy Rogers received 8 votes, so is appointed. Raleigh-Durham Airport Authority, 1 regular vacancy. Nina Schlossberg Landis received 8 votes, so would be appointed. We ready for nominations?
Mm-hmm.
On the Arts Commission, the term of Tony Gladson is expiring. She is eligible as far as length of service and would like to be considered for reappointment. You have her attendance record and a copy of the roster of the board at this point. So that will be on nominations for.
I'll make a motion to approve her reappointment.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Mary, I think you're kind of perplexed. That is common practice when somebody is serving on a board and they ask to be reappointed. So can we have a show of hands again in favor, please? Anyone opposed? Okay, I guess that was unanimous, clerk.
Okay, the next item is the Board of Adjustment, and this is a county appointee, and this is basically for your information only. We had one of the alternate members, county-appointed alternate member, resigned as he was elected to the Wake County Commissioners. So you elevated one of the county alternates, Marvin Butler, to be a regular. So that leaves a vacancy for alternate, and that will be, that appointment is by the county, but if you have any suggestions, you can pass them on to me or directly.
Somebody who must live in the ETJ.
Yes, I'm sorry, they have to live in the ETJ. But if you know of someone that fits that category, just let us know and we can pass it on, but it is a county appointee. The next item is the Community Engagement Board. We need a District C representative, and Mayor Pro Tem Branch is checking it out and will bring us a recommendation. Or
Yeah, I'm going to be nominating Otis Allen.
Who?
Otis Allen.
And since that is a District C appointee, I guess it would be appropriate for the council to confirm that appointment.
I was just going to say, would you like to make a motion?
Yeah. Yeah, I move to nominate Otis Allen to the Community Engagement Board.
Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye.
You don't gain anything from it.
Appoint.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to recuse Councilmember Fort from the
Second.
vote. All in favor? Aye. Right, that was unanimous. You were recused, and therefore you did not vote. Thank you. The rest did, if we could note
Okay.
that, clerk.
It's a 7-0 vote with Ford excused. The next item is the Environmental Advisory Board. You have 3 regular vacancies here. Let me get caught up. Kevin Hernandez and Elizabeth Bowen would like to be considered for reappointment, and I have not been able to make contact with Lisa Angel as to her desires. The first 2, you have their attendance record, and both would like to be considered for reappointment. So you
I
can.
move to reappoint the Kevin Hernandez and Elizabeth Bowen.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay.
And I will,
Ms. Clerk?
I will put Ms. Angel's name back on the nomination or the ballot for not the ballot, for nominations for next time in case we hear from her. So that will be up for appointments or nominations.
Can I ask a question, Gail? So if folks want to be reappointed, are there term limits?
Excuse me?
Are there term limits?
Yes.
Yes, a person can serve 6 years in succession.
Okay, thank you.
And then they have to go off at least 2 years before they can be considered for reappointment.
Okay, thanks.
To that board.
Okay.
They could be appointed to another board, but not on that board.
Oh, yeah, they can serve. A person can serve on 2 boards at the same time without any problem. But if they go off of one board, they can go on another board at any time. The next is Fair Housing Hearing Board. On this one. Okay, the term of Eric Colburn is expiring, and he is eligible for reappointment, and he would like to be considered for reappointment.
I have a quick question on this one. He did, he attended 3 of 8 meetings and said addition of a family member's reason for attendance problem. Has he given you any indication that he'd be able to attend more frequently?
It's my understanding he is a new father, and so maybe as things go along, he'll be better. I will double check with that
Before we vote on that, if you would double check with him, I had the same concern that whether he would be able to serve, because we do want to see improved attendance.
I will pass that information on. He was a little bit concerned because he thought he had just served a year at this point, so evidently
time flies.
His family situation is
Yeah.
tough right now. But anyway, I will check with him and put it on the next agenda. The next is the Human Relations Commission. You have 1 regular vacancy due to the resignation of Tim Longest. Past practice has been to elevate the longest-serving alternate member. In this case would be Dr. Reverend Portia Rochelle to a regular slot and declare a vacancy for an alternate.
I'll make
So
a
moved.
motion to approve that.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you.
The next, we're still on Human Relations Commission. The terms of Bertra Altocar and Gabrielle Mengelis, both regular members, are expiring. Both are eligible and would like to be considered for reappointment, and you have their attendance record on your agenda.
Motion to approve? Yes, it would be Berta and Gabriella.
I think her motion was to reappoint the two. But
Right. All right, well, you make the motion, I'll second it.
My motion is to reappoint Berta Alachar and Gabriella Mack, regular members to the Human Relations Commission.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? To both?
Okay. Okay.
I don't know either.
My first motion would be to reappoint Berta Alachar as a regular member of the Human Relations Commission.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So this was going to be a 4-4 vote.
Just hold with the next ballot then.
Yes, so those opposed? Okay. You got that? So she'll be on the next ballot, and then Gabriella?
Next motion is to nominate Gabriella Magalanes as a regular member of the Human Relations.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.
Okay, just, I got lost there. Bertra received 4-4 vote.
It was 4-4, so she'll be on the next
you want to put her
ball.
on the next ballot? Okay. Just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly. All righty. Parks, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board, you have one vacancy, as the term of Lex James is expiring, and he does not wish to be considered for reappointment, as he is now a graduate student and needs to devote his time to that. So you have one vacancy there. So it'll be on the next ballot for nominations, or if you have a nomination now, it would be fine. Next item, Stormwater Management Advisory Commission. The term of Katie Tavaler is expiring, and she does not wish to be considered for reappointment, so you have one vacancy there. And I will double-check, the Stormwater Management Advisory Commission does have certain slots that they strive to have a representative, and I'll check to see if they have any particular needs at this time, and we'll, we'll include that in your agenda. And I'm through.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the report and recommendation of the city attorney.
No report today, Mayor.
Okay. Clerk?
You do have some minutes in your agenda packet for consideration of approval.
Move for approval.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that was unanimous, clerk. All right. Do we have anything else?
No, other than my staff is on it. I've already gotten emails about future city competition.
Thank you.
Climate change challenge.
Yes. All right.
All over it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I will now adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin, for no closed session.